The anime begins with Subaru shopping at the convenience store, and at the same time another injured version of him tries to warn him of something, but Subaru does not listen to him and leaves the store. Suddenly, he blinks and realizes that he's in a world totally different from his own. It is a fantasy world where there are demi-humans, the language is different, and it is complete with a typical medieval culture. He tries to buy fruit at a stall, but his money doesn't work in this world. Subaru thinks that he has been brought to this world to fulfill a mission and be the protagonist of an adventure. However, when a girl is about to be hit by a carriage, he cannot activate magic to help her as he thought he would. He goes around the city trying to get information to find out why he is there but gets nothing. Subaru ends up in an alley, lamenting that he has his cell phone and his things from his world, but none of it is of any use to him there. Then 3 bandits appear and want to rob him. And to top it off, a girl runs by and Subaru thinks that she will help him, but she was just running away from someone, and the distraction makes the 3 bandits angry. After that, Subaru thinks that this is his chance to have his first fight to gain experience. So Subaru knocks him down easily, but chickens out when the leader pulls out some blades, allowing the bandits to recover and start hitting him. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appears looking for someone who stole an insignia from her, and just when she looks like she's going to leave Subaru with the bandits, she uses magic to threaten them and they flee. After saving him, Subaru tries to get up, but he is very injured. As he faints, the girl argues with her cat spirit about what to do with him. Shortly after, Subaru wakes up uninjured in the furry lap of the spirit, who managed to convince his owner to help him. However, the help wouldn't be free. She wants him to tell her if he saw the insignia that the girl stole from her, but no matter how much she describes it to him, Subaru doesn't know what she's talking about. Then the girl says that they are even and leaves. The cat spirit tells him that its owner is insincere, but Subaru does not think that, since she helped him even though she lost track of the thief that she was chasing. So he runs to her, asking her to let him accompany her, since he remembers the thief's face, but the girl doesn't want to owe him a favor, so he tells her that his goal is to do one good deed a day. They both begin to look for the thief, but the capital of Lugunica is such a big city that they are not able to find her. After that, the two finally introduce themselves. The spirit is called Puck, and the girl realizes that Subaru knows nothing about this world. Then she introduces herself as Satella with no family name. Then they restart their search through the city, finding a scared girl. At first, Subaru doesn't want to help her, but after seeing Satella comforting the little girl, he helps the girl calm down and they both manage to find her mother. Shortly after, on a bridge, Subaru and Satella talk about why he is helping her, despite having already done a good deed. And he says that it is okay to do more good deeds in the day and mocks her by saying that she talks to him as if she is older. Then she reveals that she is a half-elf, and Subaru says that is why she is so cute, and that causes Puck to smack him, but out of joy. After that, Subaru has an idea to go ask the owner of a fruit stand who may have witnessed what happened. But since the man sees that they don't have money, he doesn't want to tell them anything. That's when the little girl from before appears, and she turns out to be the fruit seller's daughter, and to thank them, the man tells them about the thief. Her name is Felt, and she lives in the slums. Subaru and Satella go to the slums, but the bad thing is that Puck usually disappears at dusk because during the day he uses a lot of mana to physically stay there, so Puck says goodbye to them and disappears inside a crystal. However, to guide herself, Satella uses the lesser spirits. These beings are those who still need time to become full spirits, but will do so over time. They walk through the slums looking for Felt. A man offers them a flashlight so they can search for her more easily. Then they find Felt's supposed store, where Subaru is surprised to see that Satella trusts him so much. Then Subaru enters the store, but it is dark. He finds a large amount of stolen items, but at the same time he finds a corpse surrounded by a lot of blood. Suddenly, someone fatally wounds him. Satella enters to help him, but she is also killed, and although Subaru wants to save her, in the end he dies too. When he opens his eyes, Subaru is back at the fruit stand. He has appeared at the same point as at the beginning of his day. However, he does not realize this and begins to repeat the same actions as before, meeting the bandits from the beginning of his adventure. But this time, he gives them a tremendous beating and runs desperately looking for Satella. Upon reaching the slums in the same store as before, he meets the old man he had seen murdered, but he is alive. Upon entering, he begins to talk to him, asking him about the previous night, about Satella, Felt, and the insignia, but apparently none of that has happened. For that reason, Subaru offers to exchange his junk food that he bought at the convenience store in exchange for the insignia. But the old man doesn't have it, so he will have to wait until Felt returns, and so he does, staying in front of the door of the store. Subaru spends the day outside observing the poverty of the slums, and when Felt arrives, she does not recognize him, which leaves Subaru surprised. Then they enter the store where she shows him the insignia. He has been looking for so much, but since he has no money, he offers her and the old man his phone as a means of payment, teaching them that it can take photographs. Upon seeing it, the old man in the store mistakes it for a Misha, an object that can create magic for those who cannot use it. Because this one is so rare, he believes he can sell it for twice as many coins as Felt was promised for the insignia. While Felt goes to answer the door, the old man tells Subaru that he has been taking care of Felt, due to the difficult situation that everyone lives in the slums, and he doesn't mind that he uses him since he does it too. After all, everyone is desperate to survive. Then Elsa, the woman who commissioned Felt to steal the insignia, arrives. She stands in front of Subaru to start the negotiations, but Elsa came prepared, having a total of 20 holy coins. At first, she gives the impression that Subaru has lost, but since his phone is worth more than that, he ends up winning the negotiation and with it the insignia. The woman asks him what he will do with the insignia, and he makes the mistake of telling her that he will return it to its owner. This makes her very angry and she starts to attack him, but is saved by Felt. The old man begins to fight against the woman, hitting her with his club, but in the end, he ends up dying. Felt sets out to avenge the death of her friend using her blades, but she was also killed. Subaru starts to fight too, but ends up being killed anyway, and Subaru closes his eyes. Shortly after, he wakes up again at the beginning of everything next to the fruit stand. He almost faints from the shock, but sees Satella passing by and shouts her name. But when he does so, she does not recognize him and orders him not to call her by the name of the Witch of Envy. She feels offended, since that name is taboo, and it is very rude to call someone by that name. The other demi-humans agree with her and look at Subaru badly, and in the midst of the confusion, Felt takes the opportunity to run and steal her insignia. Subaru continues on his way, reaching the alley from last time, where the bandits find him once again. But this time, instead of just avoiding them, they stab him and he passes away. Despite this, Subaru reappears at the fruit stand alive. Finally, he realizes that he can jump through time. The problem is that it is activated only when he dies. Once he realizes this, he takes the fruit seller's advice that he should not get into other people's problems, since in this timeline he does not owe Satella anything. However, he also remembers that even if they don't know each other, she's going to die. That's why he returns to the fruit stand, asking the owner about any recent theft. But to his bad luck, the theft of the insignia has already happened, so he can't do anything. Shortly after, Subaru goes to the same alley as before, encountering the bandits, but this time, instead of fighting or avoiding them, he calls a guard for help, since in his last death, he realized that they are afraid of them. The one who appears is Reinhardt, a swordsman who is quite feared by the bandits, who flee when they see him. Once he saves him, he introduces himself to Subaru in a friendly manner, telling him to be careful, since the city is dangerous in times of peace, especially for a foreigner like him. Subaru first wants to ask him to accompany him to the loot house, but then he thinks better of it and tells him that if he sees a beautiful silver-haired girl, he should tell her that he will go to the loot house to recover what was stolen from her, and Reinhardt agrees to deliver the message. After that, Subaru goes to the slums and suddenly meets Elsa, the woman who murdered him, and although she doesn't recognize him, she realizes that he is afraid of her, and he is angry with her, but she doesn't want to make a fuss, so she leaves. Subaru arrives at Felt's shelter, where upon meeting her, she attacks him thinking that he is a thief, but Subaru tells her that he only wants to buy the insignia. Thus, he shows her once again what his phone can do by taking photos and preserving them. This does not convince Felt, since although it looks like a Misha, she does not believe that it is that valuable, so they must first go to the loot house to check it out. On their way, Subaru learns that Felt's dream is to leave the slums one day, and hearing her have so much faith, he feels that he can change the destiny too. They arrive at the loot house, and the old man tells them that it is true that they can exchange the badge with the phone, but despite this, Felt does not want to sell it to him since Subaru seems very suspicious, but the old man decides to believe him and wants to sell him the insignia. Suddenly, someone knocks on the doors of the loot house, and Subaru believes it is Elsa and warns them that she is coming to eliminate them. But it turns out to be just Satella. Satella enters the loot house and immediately summons a bunch of crystals, threatening to finish Felt unless she returns the insignia. Felt thinks that Subaru was the one who brought her there, but he tries to solve everything without fighting and asks Felt to return the insignia. But before they can do anything, Elsa arrives and attacks Satella from behind. Luckily, Subaru yelled at Puck to shield her at the last second. Thus, Elsa, knowing that she has no other option, begins a fight against Satella, who manages to stay at her level by using Puck's power. But the spirit has little time since it is getting late, but still manages to immobilize Elsa before it gets dark. Despite this, Elsa manages to get out, and that causes Puck to run out of mana, and it disappears, leaving its owner alone, reminding her that if she needs it, it will come to her aid. The battle becomes even fiercer. Satella does everything she can to contain and confront Elsa. Then the old man is the first to throw himself into the battle, trying to crush Elsa, but she is too fast, to the point where he can't touch her, and in the end, he ends up like before. Subaru, seeing this, thinks it is better to end and start over, but he doesn't want to do it. He knows that he must give his all in this life. So he saves Felt, and while he distracts Elsa in a fight, it gives Felt enough time for her to flee. While this is happening, Subaru knows that Satella has one last ace up her sleeve, but Satella doesn't want to use it since he's helping her so much and she doesn't want to take him down too. Subaru motivates himself even more, getting up to fight once again, determined to have a happy ending. By doing so, he manages to confront Elsa a little, but she is still too strong for him in addition to the fact that she uses him as a shield against Satella's attacks, and this allows her to hold him and is about to cut off his leg. But at that moment, Reinhard arrives, having met Felt, who was asking for help in the neighborhood until she found him. Since Elsa is eager to fight him, they begin a battle where Reinhard proves to be stronger than her, without needing to use his Saint Sword. Although it seems that Reinhard has the fight in his favor, the truth is that he cannot fight with everything, since Satella is using her power to heal the wounds of Old Man Rom, who turned out to be badly injured and not dead. And unless she stops doing so, Reinhard can't use his magic. But once she is done, he begins to abuse the sword with a great amount of power, ending up destroying the entire house in a single attack, without leaving the slightest trace of Elsa. But suddenly, she emerges from the rubble, ready to stab Satella, but Subaru notices her and manages to save her in time. This causes Elsa, finding herself in such a disadvantageous position, to flee, vowing to eliminate them in the future. Once the fight is over, Subaru is happy that he was able to prevent everyone from dying, so as a reward, he asks for Satella's real name, which is Emilia. Subaru is relieved to have finally saved everyone, but immediately faints due to a stomach wound. Emilia says that she will take him to her house to find out why he knows her, and Reinhard was willing not to arrest Felt for the theft. But he finds out that she had stolen Emilia's insignia, so he decides to take her, because it's not a trivial crime, and he should do something about it. The next day, Subaru wakes up in a bed in an unknown place, relieved that this time he has not died, knowing that Emilia saved him by curing him with her magic. He leaves the room to look for her, but realizes that he is in a looping hallway, so he decides to take the first door to see if it is the right one. While doing so, he finds a little blonde girl reading, and she is too busy with her books, and due to Subaru's annoying attitude, she ends up making him faint from a powerful and painful spell. Shortly after, he wakes up again in the same bed, but this time, two beautiful maids, Ram and Rem, are in his room and bother him, saying that they know what he's thinking about their maid uniforms, but Emilia arrives to calm them down and thanks Subaru for his help. Then they both go to the yard, and Subaru is surprised to see that the mansion where they are is very large, so to take advantage of the yard that looks like a field, he starts doing exercises and Emilia joins him. As they do so, Puck appears and Subaru immediately begins to touch and pet it since its fur is very soft, allowing Puck to confirm to Emilia that he has no bad intentions. This confuses her, but if it's Puck who approves, then she doesn't have to worry, even if she doesn't know him at all. A short time later, the two go to lunch with the lord of the house, Roswal, who is the greatest magic user in the kingdom. He receives Subaru at his lunch, and Subaru learns that Rem is the most useful of the two twins, since she practically takes care of all the tasks from the house alone. However, the lord feels more worried about Subaru. It turns out that Lubunica doesn't have a king, and since Subaru practically came out of nowhere, he is very suspicious, and not only that, but he also connected with Emilia from the first moment. And it turns out that Emilia, despite her appearance, is one of the many candidates to be the queen of the country. And the insignia she is wearing is proof that she is one of the candidates, and if she had lost it, it would have ended all possibilities to be queen, since it is considered that whoever cannot take care of a tiny insignia cannot take care of their nation either. For that reason, she is so grateful to Subaru, and in order to thank him, they offer her whatever he wants, and Subaru takes the opportunity and asks to be allowed to work there. Roswal accepts, admitting him as a butler, but the twins are a little uneasy, since Subaru's clothes don't fit well and his appearance and attitude don't help him much either. Even so, they take him to see the mansion and introduces him to Beatrice, the blonde girl he met before. She is the mansion's librarian, capable of changing her room anywhere in the mansion. Later, Rem gives him his butler's jacket, and he surprises Rem with his sewing skills to fix the length of the pants. But it seems that that is the only ability that Subaru has, since during the day, Subaru tries to do his best at household chores, but he is a total disaster at all of them, to the point where he finally ends up hurting his hands, and this does not leave Ram happy, who informs Roswal that Subaru is totally useless. But Roswal seems more interested in his potential as a spy, although Ram says that this is unlikely. On the other hand, that night, Subaru is watching Emilia practice her magic. He is grateful for being allowed to stay. She offers to heal the wounds on his hands, but he doesn't want to because they are proof of his effort. So he invites her on a date, even though Emilia doesn't want to cause him problems. But he insists, and she agrees to go out for a walk with him the next day. When he goes to bed, he thinks about tomorrow's date. The next day, Subaru wakes up with the twins in his room and with his hands uninjured to his dismay. Subaru realizes that he died during the night, and the same day it's restarting. Subaru realizes what happened and runs out of his room, upset and depressed because his date with Emilia no longer exists. He enters the library and runs into Beatrice. She does remember him, and although she does not understand what he says about living and dying over and over again, she manages to lift his spirits. Then he leaves the mansion and meets Emilia at the yard, and he asks to pet Puck's soft fur, just like he did last time. Subaru decides to recreate the previous day to reach the same goal and have his date with Emilia. Upon reaching the bathroom, he meets Roswal, who joins him in the large bathtub. He asks him how his new job is going, but Subaru prefers to talk about the maid twins, which Subaru finds very strange, since he doesn't understand why everyone admires Ram so much, since Rem is better than her at everything and usually covers her up for tasks. As he leaves the bathroom, he meets Ram and she tells him that she will see him later in her room. She does not want him to disgrace Lord Rosewall, and that is why she is going to teach him to read and write the Lugunica language. She says that the job will be easier if he learns the language they use, and he realizes that Ram really cares about him. After language classes, while he tries on his butler outfit, he wonders why the girls only have maid outfits, and Rem reveals that as maids they don't need anything else, plus it's easier because other people will recognize their status. Later, in the kitchen, Subaru still has trouble peeling fruits, but remembers the advice Ram gave him in his past life, improving little by little, catching Rem's attention. While they continue doing housework, they tell Subaru that they want to cut his hair because he doesn't have a neat haircut like a butler should have. Subaru at first refuses, but after that, when he and Rem are cleaning the bathrooms, he makes it a condition that she only touch up his ends, and she agrees. But it will have to be after his date with Emilia. Rem doesn't understand what he's talking about, but he's sure of getting one with her. In the afternoon, he and Rem go to a town, where Subaru is having fun playing with some children. He tells them that he will have a date with a girl and asks them not to bother them tomorrow. This draws Rem's attention again. On the way to the mansion, he tells her that Ram's self-confidence is amazing, so he believes that Ram is more of a demon because of how she acts. Rem stands still and asks him if he likes demons, and Subaru says that gods never do anything, while demons at least laugh at you when you have plans. That answer amuses Rem, making her smile. At night, Emilia is in charge of teaching him to read and write since the twins are busy, so he takes the opportunity to ask her to go on a date. She doesn't even know what a date is, but she agrees because she sees how serious Subaru feels about tomorrow. At midnight, Subaru is determined to survive, so he tries his best to stay awake. But quickly, he begins to feel bad. Realizing that something is wrong with him, he goes out to ask for help, but someone attacks him, and he passes away again. Subaru wakes up screaming because he died in a very violent way, which scares the twins, but he quickly composes himself and introduces himself again. Then he goes out to walk down the hallway and ends up in the library again like the last few times, and he finds Beatrice. He continues talking to himself and thinks about the possibility that everything is Elsa's work, since the first time he died in his sleep, but the second time someone attacked him at the fourth night. But Beatrice doesn't like him interrupting her reading and throws him out the window. Subaru falls into the newly composted hedge, and that is how he has his first meeting of the day with Emilia. She asks Puck to clean him, and the spirit puts him in a huge rotating bubble of water. Once Subaru is clean, he takes revenge on Puck by tickling it, and the spirit defends itself as best it can. All of this makes Emilia laugh, and Subaru is happy to make a good impression on her again. Subaru wants to call her a nickname because he feels close to her, but Emilia doesn't feel very comfortable because she barely knows him and doesn't remember that they have already experienced many things together. So Subaru insists that they will be close in the future, so she accepts that he gives her a nickname, and Puck says that Emilia allows it because she doesn't have many friends, and that makes her happy. Suddenly, the twins tell them that Lord Rosewall has arrived and wants to have lunch with them. This will be the third time that Subaru meets him for the first time. So this time he wants to gather information to find out who attacked him last night and asks Lord Rosewall to let him live as a guest in the house. Subaru begins his investigation by touring the mansion, but the problem is that the twins don't want to talk to him because he is a guest, not an employee like them. So he goes to see Beatrice and asks her if there is a way to eliminate him through a non-physical method while he sleeps, and she answers that it can be done through a curse, a type of magic used by shamans, a subclass of magic and spirit art users. There is also an easier way to kill. You can absorb all the mana from a body, and thus cause it due to weakness, and it turns out that Beatrice remembers him in the mornings because she is the one who healed his wounds that night that Emilia took him to the mansion. Since Emilia doesn't have enough power to heal fatal wounds, but Subaru thinks that she is taking Emilia's credit, so Beatrice gets angry and sends him flying out the window again. Later, Subaru thinks of a plan to solve the problem he's in. He knows he has many attempts, but he doesn't want to treat his life as if it were disposable. In the afternoon, while he practices his writing, Ram brings him a cup of tea, and Subaru tells her a story from his homeland. It's about the Red and Blue Ogre. He tells her that the Red Ogre wanted to be friends with the villagers, so his friend, the Blue Ogre, created a plan to scare the villagers, and the Red Ogre had to defend them. That made the Red Ogre gain the friendship of the villagers, but after that, the Blue Ogre did not visit the Red Ogre again. It turns out that he left because he did not want the villagers to think that the Red Ogre was a bad ogre. Ram thinks it is a sad story, and that the Red Ogre only dragged his friend to his desires, and the only one harmed was the Blue Ogre. She asks him which of the two ogres he would prefer, but Subaru chooses both. This annoys Ram, and then they divert the conversation to the fairy tales of this world from the book he uses to practice his reading. One of them is about a pact that the royal family made with a dragon to protect the kingdom, but that is a true story, and Ram tells him that the entire royal family is dead, so no one knows what will happen to the kingdom, only the dragon. There is also a story about the Witch of Envy, Satella. When Ram leaves, she warns him not to tell the story of the ogres to Rem because she won't like it. The next day, everyone says goodbye to Subaru since he told them that he was going on a trip, but he only goes to a hill where he can see the mansion, having his kitchen knife ready to defend himself. In the afternoon, his attacker arrives and begins to attack him with a huge flail. Subaru is cornered, and he challenges his attacker to show his face, and to his surprise, his attacker is Rem. Subaru asks her why she does this to him, and she says that her duty is to eliminate anything suspicious. Then he asks her if her Ram knows about this, but she says that Ram has been pretending to get along with him. So Subaru uses the flash on his phone to distract her and run away, but she catches him once again and begins to interrogate him. She thinks that he is a spy and he came to the mansion to harm Emilia. Not only that, she is very angry because she thinks that he is associated with those who once hurt her sister, and that is something unforgivable for her. Subaru starts to cry, lamenting that he loves them as friends because thanks to them, he knows how to read, write, and peel fruit, but Rem doesn't know what he's talking about and executes him mercilessly. Shortly after, he wakes up once again in the mansion and tries to tell Emilia about his powers, but as he tries to do so, time freezes and a shadowy hand squeezes his heart and fear is engraved in him, and he concludes that he can't tell anyone about his powers. Subaru stays in bed for the rest of the day. He believes that his next day could be his last. Suddenly, Beatrice enters his room at Puck's request. She says that he is fine, but she feels the scent of the Witch of Envy emanating from him, but neither of them understands why, so Subaru begs Beatrice to protect him until the 5th day. She reluctantly agrees and swears by a contract that she will fulfill his request. Subaru is moved and begins to cry at the possibility of surviving this time. Days later, on the 4th night, he has nightmares about Rem executing him, but he manages to wake up and realizes that he's in the library with Beatrice since she took him there to protect him because she has a contract to fulfill. He starts reading to pass the time. After a few hours, Beatrice is summoned and leaves. Subaru also leaves the library, realizing that he has been able to get through the night and survive, but he meets Emilia, who takes him to Rem's room, where he finds out that she has died due to a curse of weakness, and Subaru realizes that this curse was supposed to be for him. Naturally, everyone suspects Subaru, and although Beatrice defends him by saying that she was with him all night to protecting him, no one believes him, but Emilia trusts him and tells him to say the truth about what is happening. But Subaru is too afraid that shadowy hand will come back to him, so he just apologizes and runs away from the mansion, running through the forest until he reaches the place where Rem executed him the last time. He continues walking to a cliff and is ready to jump because after so many attempts, he has not managed to save himself or the twins, feeling totally distressed by the situation, but he lacks courage and does not jump. In the afternoon, Beatrice arrives to console him and gives him a hand to get up. At that moment, he realizes that while he was unconscious and recovering from his injuries, the twins took his hands to console him since they couldn't stand him suffering alone. Suddenly, Graham arrives at the cliff and is furious with Subaru. She is willing to execute him even if Beatrice wants to protect him. Subaru is honest with Ram, admitting that he doesn't know much about what is happening or what happened to Rem, but now he is more than determined to save them. Because he loves them, he swears to Ram that he will save his sister, and he jumps off the cliff to start again. Subaru wakes up and realizes that he can start again. He is happy to see the twins, and this time he decides to become his friend from the first moment. He knows he has 2 missions to fulfill to survive. The first is to gain the trust of all the mansion's employees, including Rosewall and Beatrice, and the second is to be able to defeat the shaman who casts the curse at night. While taking a break from his duties as a butler, Subaru meets Puck. He asks how he can use magic, and the spirit reveals that he can use mana. Because he has a gate in his body, he extracts it and expels it. This is different from what Emilia does, since using spiritual arts draws mana from her surroundings. Puck offers to analyze him to tell him what type of magic he can use, since there are 4 types of attributes: fire, water, earth, and wind. But to his surprise, Subaru can only use shadow-type magic, since there are 2 more attributes that are rare: the light and shadow type. Subaru gets excited thinking that he has some special ability, but Emilia tells him that he can obstruct vision, block sound, etc. Subaru is discouraged because they are only debuffs, but Puck shows him how terrifying that power can be, so Subaru asks Puck to train him to be able to use his shadow magic. The first lesson that Puck teaches him is to try to expel mana from his gate, but he cannot control his gate and the mana explodes, leaving him almost without mana and very tired. Emilia wants him to rest, but he does not give up, so Emilia gives him a Bako fruit that serves to stimulate his mana. After the first day of work, Subaru believes that he has been able to gain the twins' trust, although Ram distrusts him and Rem keeps watching him secretly. At night, Subaru goes to talk to Beatrice to ask her about curses and how to avoid one of them. But she tells him that he reeks of a witch and tells him the story of Satella, who wiped out half the world because she was hungry for love. And not only that, Satella has silver hair and was half-elf just like Emilia. So Subaru finally understands why when they met, she called herself the much-hated Witch of Envy, If people saw her like a freak, they wouldn't have to get involved in the royal selection mess. The next day, Subaru tries to be the best possible in everything, always with a smile and trying to make Emilia and the twins laugh. But when he breaks and replaces a vase, Rem becomes more suspicious of him, because they did not show him where the vases are, and in the kitchen he tries to take care of everything so Ram can rest, so she distrusts him too. His attitude worries Puck and Emilia, since they know that Subaru is very nervous even though he pretends otherwise. Later, Subaru goes to the bathroom to vomit from nerves because he is scared of losing this new opportunity he has after having worked so hard. So Emilia goes to see him because she is worried about him, but he continues to pretend that nothing is wrong, so she takes him to her room, and just this once, she lets him lie on her lap. She tells him that she knows that he feels overwhelmed, and Subaru tries to deny it, but she starts to comfort him even though he says that everything is fine, and suddenly, he can't take it anymore and starts crying, telling her how he has worked hard to make things right, how scared and hurt he's been this whole time because he has to do it alone without telling anyone, and she just listens to him while strokes his hair. In the end, he falls asleep, and Rem sees them together and holding hands, and Emilia tells her that Subaru is a good person. Later that night, Subaru goes to the library to talk to Beatrice about curses, and she tells him that once they are activated, the curses cannot be undone, and in order for a curse to be placed on its target, there is a condition: there must be contact. Subaru remembers the times he died and thinks that he must have received the curse in the village, since when Rem went alone, she was the one who received the curse and not him. The next day, Subaru suggests that they go to the village to buy what they need at the mansion and not tomorrow as planned, so the twins accept. But this time, Ram will go with them. The three go to the village where Subaru takes the opportunity to make good friends with everyone and let them touch him to confirm that the shaman is in the village. He even pets the same puppy as before, and the stray puppy bites him on the hand again as always. In the afternoon, the three return with the purchases to the mansion and run into Rosewall, who is on his way out, and orders the twins to take care of the mansion and Subaru to take care of Emilia. This is something different, since Rosewall never left the mansion in all the lives Subaru lived, which tells him that his actions are making a difference, and therefore he has a chance to survive and save everyone. At night, he goes to see Beatrice and asks her if she can detect if he is cursed, and Beatrice is surprised to tell him that he is. Subaru realizes that he was right. The curse came from one of the villagers, so he convinces her to remove the curse. She begins to inspect him carefully and discovers a black mist in his hand, and she removes the curse, thus confirming that the cause of the curse was the puppy that was in the village. Subaru gets angry and goes to talk to the twins to ask for help, explaining the situation with the dog and how the villagers are in danger. At first, Rem doesn't believe him, but Ram trusts him and decides that she will stay to protect Emilia, while Rem will accompany him to look for the puppy. Shortly before leaving, Emilia appears, and as she senses that Subaru is going to do something dangerous, she bids him farewell with a prayer for his safe return. Upon arriving at the village, Subaru and Rem discover that several children have disappeared, and even worse, a seal that keeps the witch fans away has been broken. So the creatures made by the Witch of Envy can cross the barrier, and to top it all off, there are footprints of children going to the forest. Subaru wants to cross the barrier and go to the forest to rescue the children, but Rem believes that all of this is a tactic to leave the mansion unprotected. Even so, Subaru makes her understand that he knows the dreams and hopes of every child in the village, and that is why he wants to go save them. That convinces Rem, and the two cross the barrier to go to the forest, but not before arming herself with her flail. They arrive at the center of the forest and find the children weakened by the puppy's curse. Rem begins to heal them so they can resist until someone can remove the curse, but one of the girls wakes up and tells them that one more girl is missing. Subaru wants to go look for her, but Rem stops him. So he tells her that he will go look for the girl and she can after him when the villagers come to look for the children. He says that Rem can find him easily because he smells like the Witch of Envy, and Rem is surprised that he knows. He promises her that he will do everything possible to make her trust him. And then she can ask him questions and he will ask her questions too. After that, Subaru runs into the forest once again, encountering a missing girl, but as he approaches, a monstrous dog appears from the shadows and Subaru manages to eliminate it. But he notices that there's a whole pack of these evil dogs. He thinks that he is going to die again. But at that moment, Rem arrives and easily executes several of them. However, she knows that they are outnumbered, so she clears a path so the three of them can reach the village. But they stop to rest for just a second because Rem is badly injured and they run into the evil puppy, who summons an avalanche of earth that hurts Rem even more. Suddenly, she begins to glow and a horn emerges from her head, and Subaru realizes that she is a demon. Rem begins to execute the evil dogs, but the puppy summons more of them and she's about to be attacked without warning. So Subaru jumps to save her and the dogs start attacking him. And that makes Rem return to normal and execute the dogs. The next morning, Subaru wakes up in a house in the village, and this time he is accompanied by a sleeping Emilia, who according to Puck, have been taking care of him since last night. The spirit tells him that the dogs that attacked them are called Olgarm and left him almost dead. But Rem healed quite quickly thanks to her demon powers, and thanks to everything that happened last night, all the children are safe. Outside, he meets Ram, who thanks him for helping everyone last night since protecting the village is the landlord's job, and tells him that she restored the barrier that protects the small village. Shortly after, Subaru finds Beatrice and he thanks her for removing the curses from the children, but she is worried about something else. She tells him that because he suffered the bite of many Olgarm, he now has too many curses on his body, which are difficult to remove, so Subaru will pass away within half a day. Beatrice is surprised that Subaru is not afraid of his death, but the truth is that Subaru is already used to it, but this is not the end. Beatrice tells him that there is a very small possibility of saving him. The Olgarm that attacked him only want to eat him, so the curses can be removed if all the Olgarm are eliminated. Subaru is resigned because there were a lot of Olgarms last night, so it is almost impossible to eliminate them all. So he's glad that Emilia still doesn't know, but suddenly he realizes that he hasn't seen Rem yet, and Beatrice says that she has gone to the forest alone to execute the Olgarms. Ram, who had heard all this, does not wait a second to go after her sister, but Subaru also wants to go, since he knows that he must help Rem. So he goes with Ram to the forest even though she does not have a horn like her sister. Subaru is still very weak from the night before, but Ram cheers him up by reminding him that the entire village is grateful to him and trusts him to bring Rem. Then Ram uses her clairvoyance to see the path, but they only come across a small group of Olgarm. As they move through the forest, Ram explains that she lost her horn long ago. Demons are supposed to be born with two, but twins are born with one each and are disowned by the rest. That is why they are killed as soon as they are born, but they were allowed to live. This horn allows the demon to devour mana and become stronger, but if used incorrectly, it can leave you exhausted. That's why Ram, as an older sister, worries about Rem, even though Rem is the stronger of the two. So Subaru comes up with a plan. He tries to tell Ram about his powers, and like last time, a shadowy hand squeezes his heart, but he does it knowing that it will attract the Olgarm, since he now reeks of the witch more than before. The plan works perfectly. The Olgarms are creations of the witch, so they are attracted to Subaru, and the pack surrounds them in seconds, but unfortunately, they have to flee since Ram can only fight for a short time. They run to a cliff and fall off it, and fortunately they are saved thanks to Ram's magic, but she weakens and faints. The pack of Olgarms corners them again, and at that moment Rem arrives, but she is not able to control herself, so she attacks them too. Subaru tries to reason with her, but it doesn't work. Luckily, Ram wakes up and tells him that if he hit her on the horn, maybe she can wake up. Then Subaru puts his plan into action, pulling Ram towards her sister. However, he is not able to deliver the final blow, not until one of the dogs lifts him into the air and lets him try again. In the past, when the twins were born, the head of the clan was going to execute them. But when Rem started crying, Ram activated her horn and this saving them. And from that moment on, Ram was considered a prodigy. As the years passed, Ram's abilities were immense while Rem could barely control her magic. This caused their clan to wish that Rem had not been born and that Ram had been born with two horns. No matter how much Rem tried to practice her magic, she could never be equal to Ram, although their parents loved them both equally. Rem was very insecure, and this only worsened when Ram saved her life for a second time. Sometime later, one night Rem woke up and realized that the clan was being attacked and burned and only Ram was fighting and defending their house. So when someone tried to murder Rem, Ram ran to save her, and they cut off her horn. Even though Rem felt happy inside, she knew that this was all her fault. Since then, she decided to be the perfect twin and tried to fill the void left by the loss of Ram's horn. Only then she could pay for the future that she took from her. Back to the present, Rem wakes up, meeting Subaru and her sister. She starts crying and tells them that they should leave her alone because they were both hurt because of her, both in the past and in the present. That's why Subaru headbutts her, convincing her that they should get out of this together. After that, he tells the twins that he will distract the Olgarms while they run towards the barrier. With that in mind, he says goodbye to Rem, telling her that his reason for doing this is because she was his partner on his first date, although she doesn't remember that they went to the village in one of Subaru's lives. Thus, the twins run towards the village barrier, while Subaru goes to fight against the Olgarms using the only spell he learned from Puck. He blinds it and manages to hit him a fatal blow. Despite this, the Olgarm survives and corners him. Fortunately, Roswell arrives and burns all the Olgarms and Subaru faints. When he wakes up, he sees Rem and she tells him that now he no longer has curses. Despite this, Rem remains sad, regretting that she is only her sister's replacement and still carries the blame for the loss of Ram's horn. Subaru makes her realize that despite what she believes she has good things of her own, she is not just her sister's replacement. She herself is someone irreplaceable. She can do things that her sister cannot, and although she retains her horn, Ram doesn't blame her for it. Furthermore, she has a tomorrow, she has a future to aspire to, and a whole life to discover. With these words, Rem is relieved to feel that someone has given her the courage to live beyond the idea of her only being the replacement for her sister. At night, Ram meets Roswell, who knows that someone had been controlling the witch fiends, thinking it might be another fight for the throne. But before continuing, he puts his hand on Ram's horn scar and begins to give her mana and says that he must win this fight, determined to fulfill his goal and put an end to the dragon. On the other hand, Subaru meets Emilia, and she scolds him because he came to the mansion 4 days ago being very hurt, and now he is hurt again. But he just laughs and convinces her to go on a date, and she accepts, although she doesn't know what a date is. The next day, Subaru has his date with Emilia in the village, and they play with the children who adore Subaru. But when they return to the mansion, they find out that an emissary from the capital has arrived, indicating that it is something that is related to the selection of the throne. While Emilia and Lord Rosewall talk with the emissary, Subaru goes outside to talk to the emissary's butler to try to get information from him, but is unsuccessful. Then the emissary comes out and meets Subaru. She is Felix, and she seems to know him. Shortly after, Rosewall summons Subaru, telling him that he will go to the capital with Emilia, both for political matters and to help him heal his gate, since Emilia asked Felix to heal him because she is a healer. Meanwhile, Felix and his butler, Wilhelm van Astrea, talk about Subaru. He tells her that Subaru has eyes of someone who has already seen, implying that he is someone incredible. After that, Subaru and Emilia arrive at the capital, meeting the fruit seller that he met at the beginning when Felt stole Emilia's insignia and he buy Appas. Then, Emilia tells him that the last thing she heard about Felt is that she was taken by Reinhard. Then they meet Julius. He is a guard just like Reinhard, and apparently, he is very interested in Emilia, and he makes fun of Subaru, who can't believe Julius kissed Emilia's hand. Although Subaru wants to give him what he deserves, Emilia advises him to let it pass, since Julius will help her speak through a conference mirror Amicia used to speak with other people at a distance. While Subaru waits for Emilia outside, he sees a woman encountering the city's bandits in an alley, so he goes to help her, but she rejects his help due to his arrogance. So Subaru decides to act strong and says that he can call a guard whenever he wants, but suddenly Old Rom appears and the bandits are scared when they see his size and run away. After that, Old Rom asks Subaru about Felt, and he tells him that Reinhard took her. This angers Rom since it was an Astrea who took her. Shortly after, Emilia arrives with a knight named Ael who is looking for a princess, and it turns out that she is the girl who is with Subaru. She is Priscilla. She sees that he has Appas and is surprised because she had never seen one without peeling, so he gives her one. Back at the mansion in the capital, Emilia is in a bad mood because he was with Princess Priscilla, and on top of that, she tells him that he cannot accompany her to her meeting because he has not yet completely healed, and she knows that he puts himself in danger all the time. So she takes his hand and asks him to give her a reason to trust him, to refrain from following her, leaving him in Rem's care. Subaru doesn't feel comfortable with what Emilia asked him because in that meeting there will surely be those who want to hurt Emilia and he wants to be there to protect her. So he asks Rem to help him and she smiles at him saying that she will be very focused peeling Appas and leaves. Then Subaru leaves the mansion towards the royal castle. When he gets to the city, he asks for a ride. And just at that moment, Priscilla's carriage was passing by and takes him to the castle. Since he seems like someone interesting and fun, and her knight tells him that they are going to the castle because Priscilla is another candidate for the throne. When they arrive at the castle, Priscilla says that Subaru is her servant and the guards let him pass. There they meet Emilia, and Priscilla tries to make Emilia jealous by pretending that she is close to Subaru. But Emilia is more upset because Subaru followed her even though she asked him to stay at the mansion. The meeting begins and Roswell tells Subaru in which row he must stand, although Emilia refuses. But Subaru listens to him and goes to where Reinhard, Ael, and Felix are, discovering that the latter is a man. Julius is also in the row of knights. The Council of Wise Men arrives and the meeting begins. It turns out that the selection for the throne has not started yet, since there are supposed to be 5 candidates, and there are only 4: Emilia, Priscilla, Anastasia, and Crush. At that moment, Reinhard announces to everyone that he has already found the 5th candidate, and she enters the hall. She is Felt. Felt enters the hall, surprising everyone, and approaches Reinhard. She is upset because he put her in this mess against her will, but Reinhard puts the insignia in her hand and the gem glows, showing everyone that she is a real candidate. What's going to be a meeting now became the selection for the throne. However, when everyone finds out that she is a girl who came from the slums, they get upset, especially Priscilla, who tries to hit her with her fan since for her, Felt is a sewer rat who must be chased away, but both Emilia and Reinhard defend Felt. The selection begins and the candidates present themselves to the court, but Felt says that she is not interested in ruling, and of course the nobles agree. The situation only gets worse when it is Emilia's turn, who wants to make the nation a more equal place. However, everyone rejects her because she is similar to the Witch of Envy. This angers Subaru, who begins to defend her from those who speak ill of her, and this motivates Emilia to defend herself from the nobles. Then the leader of the wise men asks Emilia who Subaru is. He finally makes up his mind, declaring that he is Emilia's knight. But Julius questions such an announcement since Subaru is weak and does not have the determination to accompany Emilia as her knight, and he is not part of the Night Guard. Subaru, knowing that this is true, does not back down and continues to insist on being her knight since Emilia is someone special, and questions the fact that only those born with an important family name can be knights. But despite his insistence, Emilia takes him out of the hall, acknowledging to everyone that he is not her knight, leaving him embarrassed and surprised. Meanwhile, someone prepared a smoke bomb, but Reinhardt instantly dispelled it, showing that it was Old Rom who had arrived to rescue Felt, and the Night Guard are ready to execute Old Rom, and they do not receive Felt's orders because she said that she did not want to be a candidate for the throne. So despite herself, Felt retracts and says that she will participate in the selection and orders the knights to release Rom because he is part of her family, and this time they obey her. After that, Felt introduces herself and admits that she hates the nobility, the knights, and everything about the kingdom, promising that if she becomes ruler, she will destroy everything. On the other hand, Subaru was lamenting about his mistake in the meeting, but suddenly Julius arrives, taking him to a coliseum to face him in a sword duel in front of all the knights of the guard, since Subaru mocked them. Julius tells him that the duel will be with wooden swords since Subaru is weak. The fight begins, but Subaru is quickly overwhelmed by Julius, who beats him mercilessly. When Emilia finds out about this, she wants to go stop everything, but the other candidates for the throne refuse to go, except Priscilla, but she only wants to go because she finds it funny to see someone get beaten up. Back at the Colosseum, Subaru is still being beaten by Julius, who attacks him non-stop. But Emilia arrives and that distracts Julius for a second. So Subaru takes the opportunity to use his darkness spell and attacks him, but Julius dissipates it without difficulty and Subaru ends up being defeated. After that, he wakes up and sees Emilia next to him. She asks him why he fought Julius and he says that Julius is trying to separate him from her. Emilia does not understand his reasons and informs him that she and Roswell will return to the mansion, and he must stay in the city to cure his manic gait, reminding him that this was the deal. Subaru disagrees and she opens up to him saying that she doesn't believe he did everything he did for her, but for himself. He realizes that she has lost trust in him, and she tells him that he doesn't keep the promises he makes to her and gives her no reason to trust him. Subaru tries to tell her that he has been doing this for her because she saved him when he first came to this world, but the shadowy hand prevents him from telling the truth. This makes Emilia distrust him even more, and that causes Subaru to lose his mind and start shouting about everything he has done for her, and if it had not been for him, things would have been worse and her debt to him it would be bigger. Emilia looks disappointed and decides to pay him everything she owes him, and thus end everything she has with Subaru. Days later, Subaru is in Crush's mansion, one of the candidates for the throne. He was training the use of the sword with Will. The old man was a knight, so he easily defeats him again and again. One day, Reinhardt arrives at the manor and apologizes for not having been able to stop the duel and asks him to forget the duel. However, Subaru does not want to do it, and instead, he returns to his training with Will. He trains with all his strength but still feels pathetic, and Rem consoles him by saying that she knows he is someone pathetic, but she does not believe that his efforts be in vain. The next day, Rem and Subaru go to the city, and he overhears several citizens speaking ill of Emilia. They do not want her to be their ruler because she resembles the Witch of Envy. He almost gets into a fight to defend her, but the fruit seller tells him that everyone is afraid of the witch, so it is normal that because of her resemblance to the witch, no one wants to support Emilia, and this only makes Subaru feel worse, so he returns to Crush Manor looking to become stronger. At night, he meets Crush and she invites him to drink and asks him about the healing of his gait and complains about the marriage proposals she receives, which bothers Subaru, who imagines Emilia receiving those proposals too. At that moment, Felix arrives and scolds his lady for wearing revealing clothes in front of Subaru, but she says that everyone knows that Subaru loves Emilia. But Felix says that he knows that they fought, but he encourages him to make up with her so that he stops feeling so miserable and advises him to fight for what he wants, and Subaru realizes that there is a way to fix his relationship with Emilia, since there is something that only he can do. The next day, he continues training harder, but Will stops him, as he feels that Subaru does not want to become stronger than he already is. Suddenly, Rem calls him and they meet with Crush, who warns them that there is a problem in Roswell's mansion, because Emilia is half-elf, which has generated many enemies and problems for her. Subaru believes that he is the only one who can help Emilia in this situation, so he says he will return to the mansion. But Crush warns him that he is here for Felix to cure his gait, and she made a contract with Emilia to protect him while he remains in this mansion. The moment he leaves, the contract will be broken, and they will become enemies because they belong to different sides. Despite this, Subaru decides to go against Emilia's orders and returns to the mansion. Back at the mansion, he and Rem stop at a village to rest. At midnight, she goes to his room and tells him that she will heal the gait in his back, but in reality, she only puts Subaru to sleep. When he wakes up the next day, he finds that Rem has abandoned him in the village, leaving him nothing but a letter asking him to wait for her return. That makes him very angry, and he immediately asks for a ride to the mansion. He is upset with Rem because he thinks she also believes he's a good-for-nothing. The carriage takes a whole day to reach Roswell's territory, and the driver asks him to turn around because his dragon feels that there are many dangers ahead. But Subaru decides to continue alone, and when crossing the forest, he encounters several shadowy figures, which bow him and then disappear. He walks all night, and in the morning, he finally arrives at the village he loves so much but finds that everyone has been He gets desperate and runs to the mansion, and the first thing he sees is Rem's lifeless body with a sword stuck in her back. Chapter 15. Subaru cannot believe his eyes and immediately begins to search the entire mansion for any signs that anyone has survived, but only finds corpses everywhere, including those of Ram and Petra, a girl from the village. And the worst happens, he sees Emilia's hair ornaments covered in blood on the floor and follows the trail to a frozen basement, and he starts to freeze and sees the shadowy figures he saw in the forest. It tells him that he was too late. Subaru ends up freezing and dies. But he quickly opens his eyes and sees Rem next to him buying apps with him in the city. Subaru returns to the life of days before. He feels very relieved but ends up mentally collapsing. Rem takes him to the Crush's manor and Felix tries to heal him, but he has nothing physically and concludes that he has emotional scars and he cannot heal him. However, Rem can the miasma of the Witch of Envy emanating from him and understands that something very bad is happening to him. Seeing that his condition does not improve, she decides they should both return to Roswell's mansion, since Subaru does not speak and only sometimes says the name of the twins and Emilia. On the way to the mansion, Subaru continues without reacting the entire way. The next morning, as they approach Roswell's territory, Rem notices that everything is very quiet until he feels a pounding in her heart and knows that her sister is in trouble. Suddenly, they are attacked by the hooded people. It turns out that they are worshippers of the Witch of Envy, and Rem realizes that they are the same cultists who burned her clan and stole her twins' corn. Rem tries to confront them, but they easily defeat her, taking Subaru with them. Subaru is taken to a secret cave, where a man named Betelgeuse, the archbishop of the cult, asks him if he has pride, and is concerned that the day of the test is near and his subordinates are doing nothing useful, until he sends them after Emilia, leaving him alone with Subaru. Betelgeuse begins to ask him why he pretends to be crazy, since for him, true madness is acting freely and calmly. But Subaru does not react and begins to rave and cry profusely about everything he has experienced, exciting Betelgeuse even more than before. At that moment, Rem arrives very badly injured and she sees that Subaru is worse and begins to attack everyone with fury. At first, this excites Betelgeuse, but after a while, he uses his magic to twist Rem's body and tells Subaru that because of his sloth, she has died. That's why Subaru pulls himself together, and in a burst of rage, he vows to eliminate Betelgeuse. He, however, leaves having more important matters than Subaru, and before leaving, he mocks Rem in her vain attempt to save Subaru. This only infuriates Subaru even more, who continues cursing him for a long time, trying to free himself from the chains without succeeding. In the end, Rem crawls with her broken body and manages to reach Subaru, and with her last breath, she breaks his shackles and asks him to live confessing that she loves him. As soon as he frees himself from it, he carries her all the way to Roswell's territory and sees that the village is once again in ruins and corpses are everywhere. But this time it starts to snow. Upon arriving at the mansion, a huge white tiger cuts off Subaru's head and tells him to sleep along with its daughter. Subaru opens his eyes and is once again with Rem at the fruit vendor's stand. He takes her hand to lead her away, feeling calmer, or so it seems, because Rem tells him that he smells more than ever of the witch and his eyes light up with anger and desire for revenge, since this time he knows who is responsible for what is going to happen. Subaru and Rem return to the Crush Manor, and at gates they meet Russell, a man who manages the flow of money both inside and outside the nation. After that, Subaru meets with Crush and Felix and tells them that a witch-worshipping cult will attack Roswell's territory in 3 days. Although Subaru wants help, no one believes him, and there are 2 problems. The first is that Crush will not help Emilia because it is her duty to protect her people, and the second is that Crush suspects that Subaru is a member of the cults since he knows the exact day that they will attack Roswell's territories. This is quickly ruled out when he explodes in anger, showing how much he wants to eliminate the cult, and Crush tells him that she knows he is hiding something because he has never once said that he wants to save Emilia. Even so, she knows that he is not lying, and if he believes what he says, it means that he is falling into madness. Subaru gets upset and leaves the mansion with Rem, and he tells Crush that he hopes she's a good ruler since she seems like a dictator who abandons the weak. Subaru and Rem go to an inn, and she tells him that Roswell is not in his territory because he has meetings far from the mansion, and they cannot count on Reinhard either because he is far from the capital. So his only option is to ask the other candidates for reinforcements. The next day, Subaru goes to ask Priscilla for help, who, seeing how desperate he is very amused, but clarifies that Emilia's problems do not matter to her, and if she wanted, she could cut off his head right there. However, she offers him a chance, but at the cost of humiliation. Subaru agrees to lick her feet, but this only angers Priscilla since she did not believe he would accept, so she throws him out of the mansion, leaving Subaru hurt and upset at not having anyone to help him. In the city, he meets a girl who notices that he has been bleeding. She turns out to be Mimi, Anastasia's second best guard. Anastasia is another candidate for the throne, and she takes him to a canteen and he tells her his problem and how he needs reinforcements and to get to his mansion as soon as possible. So Anastasia gives him a signed paper to get a carriage to take him to the territory of Rosewall, since at the moment it is very difficult to get a carriage since there is a lot of movement in the city because many iron products and weapons are being sold. This scares Subaru, believing that a war is about to start, but Anastasia tells him that it is only to move the economy. That makes him remember that Crush had been having a lot of visitors, including Russell, and he tells Anastasia about it. It turns out that she was pretending to be nice to him since she wanted to get information from Crush, and he just gave it to her. This angers him since it confirms that all the candidates for the throne would be terrible as rulers. Before leaving, Anastasia tells him that the key to a negotiation is to prepare beforehand and shake out in front of the other what he wants, and then she gives the order and a canteen empties, since everyone who was there was her knight, showing him that he fell into her trap from the beginning. At that moment, Rem arrives, warning him that the knights have received many reports from the cult, so they do not know which ones are real. So the only option left is to go with Emilia and Ram to at least try to save them. As they do so, they meet Otto on the way, the driver who took Subaru before. This one has the problem of having bought too much oil, and Subaru takes the opportunity to get by it all, and in turn, hire the other carriages to take people with them. As they travel through the night, Subaru shows them his phone to illuminate the map, and as they go, they see an ancient tree, said to have been planted by an old flugel long ago. Suddenly, Subaru notices that the other carriages have disappeared. While trying to shine a light on the fog that has formed, he discovers a giant whale following them. The giant whale attacks them, causing strong gusts of wind. Otto and Rem explain that it is the white whale, a giant and monstrous creature, but is only chasing them, even though there are other carriages. Rem knows that they don't have much hope, so she tells Subaru that she will jump to try to stop the whale. So she knocks Subaru out so he doesn't follow her, and he can save himself. Shortly after, he wakes up only to learn the sad news that Ren was left behind. So he orders Otto to turn around to save her, but Otto knows that they can't do anything, since before the whale killed the Saint Swordswoman. Subaru grieves for Rem, but Otto tells him that he doesn't remember anyone named Rem. This makes Subaru angry, and he hits him when he sees that Otto doesn't seem to care that Rem saved them from the white whale. However, the whale continues to chase them, and they try to lose it by knocking out the carriage's light. This still doesn't help, and Subaru realizes that the whale is a witch fiend and feels attracted to Subaru. Otto hears this and throws him out of the carriage to save himself. Once in front of the whale, Subaru flees, terrified that he is going to pass away again. But in the end, he realizes that there is nothing chasing him. He continues walking, badly injured, and encounters Otto's dragon, which takes him to the territory of Rosewall, and when he arrives at the village, Subaru is happy because the misfortune has not happened yet. After such a long night, he faints and the children take him to the mansion. When he wakes up, he sees that he is accompanied by Ram. He tells her everything that happened and tells her that Rem sacrificed herself to save him. But Ram looks at him confused and tells him that she doesn't know who Rem is, she has never had a twin. This terrifies Subaru, who goes to Rem's bedroom to prove that she is wrong, discovering that Ram is right, and that there is no evidence that Rem ever lived in the mansion. This leaves him disturbed, and at first he wants to avoid Emilia, but he knows he must confront her. Therefore, he goes to her and tries to ask her to go with him to a safe place away from the mansion. He states that she will thank him for it in a few days, so he is willing to take her by force. However, Emilia does not trust him, and to make everything worse, Subaru confirms that Emilia does not remember Rem either, and she becomes more worried, stating that Subaru does not stop crying. At this point, nothing matters to him anymore, so he decides to open up to her, even if those shadowy hands come for him. So Subaru tells Emilia that he can come back from the dead, but the shadowy hands don't touch him, they execute Emilia, and this totally breaks Subaru, who stays hugging Emilia's corpse all day. When Beatrice arrives, she breaks Emilia's crystal and says that Puck will return to his true form, then he begs her to execute him. She doesn't want to fulfill his wish, so she teleports him outside the mansion into the forest so she doesn't see him. In the forest, Subaru continues hugging Emilia's body and continues asking for forgiveness and begging for someone to execute him. Suddenly, the witch's worshippers appear with Beetlejuice. He takes out shadowy hands from his body, which turn out to be called unseen hands, and immobilizes Subaru, then tries to grab Emilia's body, but this is prevented by Puck. He is very upset and asks what they are doing to his daughter. Puck begins to eliminate the cult members, cornering Beetlejuice, who despite having lost is not scared, and knows that in the end he has ended up winning, so he is not afraid of dying. Once eliminated, Puck talks to Subaru in his true form. He's a giant white tiger and it starts to snow. He tells Subaru that he committed 3 sins. The first was breaking his promise to Emilia, something important for those who use the spiritual arts. The second was to disobey her and go see her. And the third was to let her die, so now Puck, according to his contract, will destroy the world, because without Emilia, it has no meaning. As Subaru dies in the cold, he hears the laughter of a madman, believing it to be Beetlejuice's, but in reality, it was his own. After that, Subaru opens his eyes and sees that he is again at the fruit stand with Rem. He takes her hand and takes her to a rooftop, and once alone, he asks her to run away together. since he is tired of trying and has decided to listen to the others, that he cannot do anything to prevent what is going to happen, whether he stays or goes to the mansion. So he asks Rem to run away together to go to another country, offering everything he has to take care of her, so that they can save themselves because he is tired of the fact that no matter what he does, he always finds it. He no longer wants to fail. He no longer wants to see anyone die. That's why he wants to run away. Rem, although she is happy that he offers her this, can't run away with him. But she fantasizes a little about the life they could have, about how once they move out and get a job, they could have a house and a beautiful family, and maybe she dies first accompanied by him and their children. However, she knows that if they run away now, she will leave behind the Subaru she loves, so she asks him to tell her what is happening to help him, but he is too afraid of this, so he gave up. She insists since, although she does not know the type of things he has been through, she does know that Subaru is not someone who gives up easily, and precisely because of that, she knows that she can trust him. Subaru, upon hearing this, becomes even more upset, since he always knew that he has been someone detestable, and that never in his life, both before and after coming to this world, he did nothing. He's just been lazy, and now he's suffering the results of it. It's worse when he mentions that everyone was right about him, since he has always been doing things like studying or training, because he worried about how others saw him or because he used a cheap excuse to do it, but it was all because of his shame that they saw how pathetic he is. That's why he hates himself. Upon hearing this, Rem begins to mention all the things she likes about him, such as him stroking her head, sleeping on her lap, and many other things, all the result of the kind acts he has done so far, such as went to save her in the forest, help her and her sister, and above all, save her after having melted her heart of ice. That's why she loves him, because even if no one listens to him, and he doesn't even have faith in himself, she will always be there for him. Because despite being weak and small, he is a hero, at least for her. Despite hearing this, Subaru remains discouraged, thinking that no matter what he does, he won't be able to save anyone. Rem continues to comfort him by making him see that just as he saved her in the past, now she will do the same with him, and for that, she will share his burden and start his life from scratch. This encourages Subaru, and he confesses that he loves Emilia, so he asks Rem for help to take her to a future where they can laugh together. Although she was rejected, she accepts and Subaru hugs her, grateful to her and determined to start his new life in another world from zero. Chapter 19. They go to meet Crush and ask for her help, offering some of the magic stones from Roswell's territory, an alliance with Emilia's faction, and information on when and where the white whale will appear. This surprises Will, but Subaru says that he knows this thanks to his phone, and tells them that it is Emilia, since when he was attacked by the white whale in his past life, he managed to see the time on the phone. While Crush can determine that he is not lying, she does not think it is a good idea to make a deal with their faction. So Subaru uses the information he got in his other timelines and tells her that he already discovered her trading plans buying weapons and iron. That surprises Crush, and even more so when Anastasia and Russell join the conversation, interested in helping and eliminating the whale, of course, for their own benefits. It turns out that Subaru and Rem have previously talked to them, and they agree to join the meeting with Crush. Even so, Crush still doesn't trust Subaru too much, but she has been surprised by how he found out about her plans so easily, so she decides to help him. Thus, once they close the deal, Subaru lies down on the couch, relieved that everything went well, receiving congratulations from everyone for having proven to be so clever in putting all this together. However, the one who thanks him the most is Will, since he is an Astrea and widower of the last great swordswoman of the kingdom who was killed by the white whale. At night, all the soldiers are preparing to go into battle, but Subaru can't sleep, nervous that everything will turn out well, or that something or someone will get hurt. But Felix relieves him by saying that everyone is there of his own free will. The next morning, Felix gives Subaru to choose a dragon to ride, and he chooses one just like Emilia's, surprising Felix, since those of that type are usually very proud. Later, he goes to a meeting where all the knights are and meets Ricardo, one of Anastasia's best mercenaries. Crush arrives dressed in her armor and tells Subaru that she doubts he can be of use, but he mentions that he can be useful as bait, since the witch fiends track him easily. Then some old knights arrive to thank Subaru, since many there have a history with the whale and have wanted to get rid of it for a long time. For this and much more, after a motivational speech by Crush, everyone leaves for the whale's territory. Subaru rides alongside Mimi and her brother Hetaro, who gives the orders in her place since she is very impulsive. In addition, he also notices that Ricardo and the others are riding riders instead of dragons, since these are faster. Although less strong than dragons, they are essential for a fight. Subaru also realizes that with such a large group, a witch cult may not attack them, so it seems that he will have more problems in the near future. Once they arrive at the place where the whale will appear, Rem reveals to Subaru that she knows that he is lying about the phone, but she also knows that he has his reasons for not telling her the truth, and says that she completely trusts him, and he thanks her for it. After that, they see Will, who was looking at the flowers, remembering how his wife loved them, but in the end, he ended up losing her to the whale. So to cheer her up, Subaru promises that he will help him to put an end to the whale. Shortly after, all the troops gather, ready to finish off the whale, and as soon as it appears, Crush can't believe it, but Subaru rides alongside Rem to distract it, giving the others a chance to attack. The battle against the whale is about to begin, and Will can't help but remember how he met his wife Theresia in a field of flowers that she liked to look at. The memory is interrupted when the others begin the attack against the whale, launching all kinds of rays of light which illuminate the night sky, and now it seems like daytime. Now Subaru can see how big and strong the white whale is. Rem thinks he's scared, but he jokes that he expects a good thank you for being the hero of this battle. So he starts with his part of the plan, distracting the whale. It follows him and is exposed to an attack from Crush and her army, but it lunges at them, forcing them to scatter. But Will is not intimidated, and remembering her wife, he jumps on the whale to slay it, managing to make very large cuts in its skin, releasing all the anger that he has had stored up for 14 years. Meanwhile, Subaru is glad that everyone is launching their best attacks, since the creature won't stop bleeding. However, Ricardo is not so optimistic, because they hope to have already knocked it down, but no matter what they do, they can't knock it down. This is because the whale has a special mechanism to divert and avoid mana, with which it avoids being injured by magical attacks. However, Subaru does not give up and encourages others. Upon seeing him, Felix notices that he has changed a lot, becoming a better person than he was before. Above, Will continues attacking and cutting the whale with his sword, managing to remove one of its eyes. This makes it seem like they are winning the fight, but out of nowhere, the monster turns its other eye red and makes a very loud sound along with a large fog that blinds everyone. Seeing this, Subaru and the others believe that they have lost their chance, but in reality he knows that this fog is the same one that took Rem in the past and eliminated her. Fortunately, he meets several of the soldiers along with Crush and the others, but due to the whale and the fog, everyone begins to feel great pain, a product of the mana disease which apparently only Subaru can resist. Fortunately, Felix begins to heal the injured quickly, and Subaru says that he will buy more time by distracting the whale with Rem, so they ride his dragon to get the whale's attention, while the others regroup. Subaru invokes the shadow hand that squeezes his heart when he wants to talk about his powers, but instead of touching him, it speaks to him and surrounds him with the scent of the witch. The plan works perfectly, since now Subaru and Rem must avoid the whale, which sneaks through the fog to eat them, but before it can achieve this, Will arrives with reinforcements, managing to attack the beast. The whale sneaks back into the fog, and no one knows where the witch fiend will come from until a pile of mist comes down towards them, and Will sees the last yellow flower that remains and remembers Theresia again. He was frustrated because she was better than him at the sword, but she wielded it because she wanted to protect someone else, so the whale swallows Will and the last flower. Subaru can't believe what is happening and is almost hit by the whale, but Ricardo saves him, and he realizes that now there is something much worse in the sky. There is more than one whale. Seeing all this, the knights lose hope of winning, but Subaru does not give up and continues attacking alongside Rem to take Will out of the whale's mouth. Meanwhile, Crush tries to get her squad to help her, but they don't respond because they think they have lost the battle, so she faces off alone against one of the whales, attacking it as she can. Subaru rides to help Rem, who has awakened her horn and mercilessly attacks one of the whales, while another attacks Subaru, but Mimi and Hetaro help him with their powers. They tell him that Ricardo survived and send a message. The whale is now lighter. That message makes Subaru realize what is happening. Suddenly, they see Will start to fight from inside the whale, and Rem cuts that part to help him get out. After that, Subaru goes to Crush to tell her what he just discovered. It turns out that the white whale realized that they are managing to hurt it, so it created copies of itself to fight, and the real one is the one at the top, avoiding death. For this reason, Subaru proposed a risky strategy, one that can work, and Crush accepts it. It will be an all-or-nothing bet. So Crush goes to her army to defend them from the whales and tells them that Subaru, despite being the weakest and the only one without powers or weapons in the entire army, continues shouting and fighting, convinced that they will win. If he is the weakest of the entire army, it is a shame that he is the only one with his head held high, giving his all in the battle. This motivates everyone to continue fighting, and they prepare for the last attack. Subaru, on the other hand, manages to reach the real whale with the help of Rem, and when they are near the fluval tree, Subaru throws himself into the void, shouting about his past lives and thus impregnating himself with the witch's scent. This attracts the whale, which comes down from the sky to chase him. Rem catches Subaru, and Crush gives the order to cut down the giant tree, and when it falls, it crushes the whale. The plan worked. Having immobilized the whale, Will approaches and begins to attack it without stopping, while remembering how he became more skilled with the sword and managed to defeat Theresia in the duel as a royal swordsman. When he won, he told his wife that he was better swordsman to protect her. Now he has the opportunity to finish off the whale, and thus put the memory of his wife to rest. Upon finishing off the whale, all the troops burst into joy, having been able to put an end to a monster that tormented people for 4 centuries. In the end, while everyone is resting from the arduous fight, Crush goes to Subaru and thanks him for his help. He looks worried because he has just noticed that he has helped Crush in the royal selection, but she does not plan to take credit for this alone because it was thanks to him that they finished off the white whale. She offers him to join her faction because he has proven to be someone extraordinary. But Subaru only wants to support Emilia to become ruler, but not for her or anyone else, but because he wants to, and Crush accepts this answer. She tells him that regardless of whether there is an alliance in the future or whether they are enemies, she will continue to respect him until the end, because today he has demonstrated his value and shakes his hands as a sign that she sees him as an equal. At that moment, Will arrives and thanks Subaru, because thanks to him, he got a chance to finally avenge his wife and put the memory of her to rest. Finally, because he still has unfinished business, Crush gives him a small army to accompany him as a sign of gratitude. After that, Subaru goes to see Felix, who is healing Rem. He says that she can't move since she has exerted herself too much. Subaru agrees, but he calms her down, promising that he won't let her leave his side even if they separate. After saying goodbye, Mimi and Ricardo tell Subaru that they will receive help to confront the witch's worshippers. The bad thing is that with these new reinforcements, Julius also comes. Subaru and Julius are once again face to face, and they both talk a little about the past, but Julius just wanted to thank him and congratulate him for what he just did with the whale. Once they catch up, they begin the meeting where Subaru explains his plan. It turns out that thanks to Ruzel, he convinced the merchants to help them and in this way evacuate the villages from Roswell's territory. So now they have an advantage over the cult and can attack without problems. Well, except for Emilia, who still doesn't know about the alliance, so Crush sent her a handwritten letter. Once everyone sets off, Julius rides alongside Subaru. He acknowledges that he was at fault before and thanks him for coming to help him. Julius also thanks him for finishing off the white whale since eliminated was something that the Night Guard wanted the most and apologizes for belittling him. This shows that even though they both hate each other, at least they respect each other. Meanwhile, Emilia is somewhat downcast about Subaru's situation, although she still doesn't know what's happened so far. In a forest, Subaru puts his plan into action and goes to the territory of the cult where the hooded men surround him, but he smells a lot like the witch and orders them to leave because he wants to talk to their leader. Seeing that it was so easy, he is relieved a little, but he continues walking and meets Beetlejuice, who welcomes him happily and asks him if he is Pride, since the only seat of the 6 Sin Archbishops that is free is Pride, but he quickly discovers that he has not been called, nor does he appear in the Gospel, so he begins to suspect Subaru. He keeps trying to make him believe that he is with them. Beetlejuice gets impatient and uses his unseen hands to attack him, but Subaru is able to dodge them easily. Suddenly, Mimi and her little brother Tivy collapse the cult's entrance, burying the cult members under stones, and from behind, Will appears to cut Beetlejuice in two. Meanwhile, Mimi and Tivy inspect the corpse of Beetlejuice and they find the Gospel, which is said that when someone receives its Gospel, they become a faithful believer of the witch. Subaru keeps it to try to decipher the plans that the worshippers had. Before leaving, Mimi and her brother explode Beetlejuice's body. Then they go to join the others, discussing what to do with the fingers, Beetlejuice's helpers. Suddenly, they are attacked by unseen hands that manage to eliminate several of them and take Subaru deep into the forest. The one who is using the unseen hands is a finger, which apparently is a replica of Beetlejuice since he acts just like him, and because he does not have his Gospel, he begins to strangle Subaru until the spirit arrives to save him. Along with Mimi, Tivy, and Will, they eliminate the new Archbishop of Sloth, coming to the conclusion that everyone remaining could be just like Beetlejuice. After that, they return to their troop and Subaru is upset because he believes that all this is his fault, to which Will asks him not to give up and fight to continue holding on to victory until they achieve it, and encourages Subaru not to get stronger, but to be strong. The group advances towards Roswell's territory, seeking to evacuate those who remain, and on their way, Felix speaks with Subaru and asks him to reconcile with Julius, since he knows that he still holds a grudge against him. Upon hearing this, Subaru approaches Julius, but as he does so, a blue pollen fog surrounds them. It is Ram. Subaru quickly realizes that what he is seeing is just an illusion, but suddenly he is attacked by the stems of a blue flower, and the same spirit from before comes to his aid to free him. It turns out that this was the work of Julius, who begins to use his spirits to free the others from mind control and bring them back, but as he does so, Ram appears to attack everyone. The group stops her, and she accuses Subaru of treason because he has brought a small army from another faction to Roswell and Emilia's territory. But Subaru tells her that they sent a letter explaining what was happening, but Ram tells them that the letter was blank, and Julius explains that a blank letter can be interpreted as a declaration of war. However, Subaru curtly explains the situation with the witch cult to her, so she believes him and lets them continue. They all arrive at the village where Subaru tries to calm the people and evacuate them safely, but he quickly notices that it is not that simple since they believe that everything is Emilia's fault. Subaru becomes even more upset when the villagers say that Emilia is the one attracted to the witch cult because she is half-elf, but Felix encourages him and says the same words as his lady, making Subaru raise his head. and ask them more entrusted to people who trust him and evacuate carefully, and this works. Petra arrives worried to talk to him about Emilia, since recently she also went to ask the villagers to take refuge in Roswell's mansion. But no one wanted to listen to her, and the only thing she could do was reinforce the village barrier, and Subaru assures her that Emilia will also be safe. After that, Subaru asks Julius to accompany him to the mansion to talk to Emilia and explain the situation. He accepts, and Subaru asks him why he saved him with his red spirit, but instead, Julius is more intrigued about Subaru, since he has demonstrated an affinity for using spiritual arts. Shortly after, Subaru goes to meet Felix in one of the carriages, where he asks him to accompany him to explain the situation in the mansion since he is part of the Crush faction. But before he can leave, Felix finds one of the fingers of the cult paralyzing him, but he self-destructs in an explosion as soon as they catch him. Subaru wakes up some time later to find the chaos of the battle, where the witch cult is attacking the village non-stop, destroying everything in its path. Still, Julius and the others cheer him up and go to the battlefield, where they find that Will has been badly injured by another of the fingers. Suddenly, one of the archbishops appears and pounces on Subaru to take the gospel of Beetlejuice from him, so Subaru guides him into the forest and crosses the barrier, grabbing one of Emilia's blessed crystals. And with the crystal in his hand, he is immune to the beasts of the forest, and the archbishop ends up being devoured by all the Ulgarm in the place. Once Subaru returns to the village, he discovers that there is still one last archbishop to destroy, and before he can join the battle, Emilia arrives to confront him, to which Felix stops Subaru, since he knows how strong Emilia is. And this is true, Emilia is able to control the archbishop alone, avoiding his attacks and cornering him until she finally freezes him. Once the fight is over, when she sees Subaru, she cries a little, and Felix encourages him to go with her, but before doing so, he feels strange and runs away from her. Julius and Felix follow him, only to realize that Beetlejuice has possessed him. Therefore, Subaru, with the last of his strength, asks his friends to execute him, knowing that there is no other option to win. As Julius refuses, Felix is the one who paralyzes him, giving them the opportunity to end this, and then Julius, with all his regret, executes Subaru. Subaru opens his eyes and is at the whale's post-battle meeting. He quickly realizes what moment he is in and tells them everything he knows about the witch's worshippers. He says that Beetlejuice can change and possess other bodies, using cult's fingers to do so, but the problem is that he can also be possessed, so they have to make a plan to foresee all the possible scenarios. Meanwhile, Emilia has nightmares about the villagers insulting her for looking like the Witch of Envy and her fight with Subaru. Then she wakes up and asks Puck for advice on what to do, but her wise spirit only advises her to do what she wants, assuring her that he will accompany her wherever she goes. Shortly after, Will and Ram arrive at Roswell's mansion to clarify to Emilia that the blank letter does not mean a declaration of war from Crush, and Will apologizes for the misunderstanding and asks her to evacuate with the villagers because the witch cults are nearby. Subaru also arrives to the mansion, but he is disguised and asks her to evacuate. Puck appears and tells them that Beatrice will stay in the magical library because it is the safest place for her. Emilia worries not knowing what to do, but Puck helps her decide. In the end, she decides to trust them and help evacuate the villagers. When she goes to the village, she finds that everyone is evacuating, but Subaru, who is still disguised, tells her that she must go in the carriage with the children. As he sees that she hesitates because she is afraid that the children will not trust her, he approaches Petra and asks her if she wants to go with Emilia, and the little girl says that she knows she is Subaru's friend and knows that she will protect them, and the other children agree with Petra. This moves Emilia, and as she leaves with the children, Subaru and the others ambush the town's traitor, subduing him and his henchmen, ready to trap the archbishops of the witch cult. Once the preparations are finished, everyone meets again in the village, where Felix congratulates Subaru after having helped correct the blank letter incident and convinced the villagers that Emilia wanted to protect them, and they had to evacuate. Ricardo arrives along with the other members of his squad, announcing that they have already destroyed a good part of the cultists and their communications network. Now it's time to start the last assault, so Subaru heads to where Beetlejuice is, acting better than ever as a witch worshipper, managing to gain his trust, so the Archbishop tells him about Ordeal. It turns out that the Ordeal is a process by which they will use Emilia as a vessel in order to resurrect the Witch of Envy, and if it doesn't work, they will try another one. This bothers Subaru, but he continues with his role, so the Archbishop asks him to show him his gospel, and Subaru shows him the Misha that he took from one of the witch's worshippers. These are used to communicate. This disturbs the Archbishop, and he is distracted long enough for Subaru's dragon. Patrash tosses him aside. Subaru mounts his dragon and tells him that the witch is so close to him that she squeezes his heart sometimes. That makes Beetlejuice very angry, and he starts to chase him. Subaru rides into the forest and is surrounded by Beetlejuice's henchmen, and just at the last minute, Mimi and her brother appear to save him and deal with them. So Subaru continues riding to the cliff where he once died. Here, Subaru had Beetlejuice's natural enemy, Julius, a spiritual arts user. With that in mind, they begin to prepare their attack against Beetlejuice. Julius apologizes for their duel in the Colosseum, and Subaru tells him that he hates him but knows that he is a great knight and trusts him to win. Beetlejuice attacks them using his unseen hands, and to his surprise, Julius cuts them with his sword. It turns out that Julius is using one of his spirits to connect his eyes to Subaru's. So now the two fight as one, and Julius promises Subaru that he will win along with his new friend him. They both fight as one, evading the unseen hands of Beetlejuice. The fight is very tough, and it takes Julius a while to adapt to Subaru's eyes, but when he feels more comfortable, he manages to corner Beetlejuice. Then Beetlejuice hides behind a rock sphere. Subaru uses a gem to destroy it with an explosion, and Beetlejuice is caught by Julius. But he does not give up and uses his last trick. He possesses Subaru, but Subaru summons the witch, saying that he can revive. The witch arrives to squeeze Subaru's heart, but there is Beetlejuice. He is excited to see her, but the witch rejects him immediately, and the Archbishop returns to his badly injured body, devastated by being rejected by the witch that he adores so much. And finally, Julius finishes him off. After Subaru collected the gospel, he returns with Felix and Otto, who tell him that Ketty, the village trader, left a pile of firestones in the carriage where Emilia and the children are riding, so they have to go quickly for it. That's why Otto offers to take him, so after saying goodbye to Julius, he gives Subaru a spirit to help him. Subaru leaves in a hurry with Otto, taking the shortest route of the forest, but also the most dangerous, marching at full speed. As they cross it, they notice that the animals are scared and quickly realize that something is chasing them. It is the corpse of Beetlejuice, animated by the unseen hand. On the other hand, Will and his squad destroy the cultists, where chasing the Ebicus, and Emilia comforts the children, so they do not be afraid. But although they are scared, they tell her that this is nothing and they do not want to leave her, because if they do it, she will do something dangerous, and they promise to Subaru to stay with her. But they later realize that they promised not to tell Emilia. That leaves her thinking about Subaru, worrying her more. Back with Subaru, he tells Beetlejuice that he will not give up, and that no matter what, he will defeat him and save Emilia. So he throws a barrel of oil from Otto's carriage at him, and then uses the spirit Julius gave him to set it on fire. Although Beetlejuice burns in flames, he still insists on keeping Subaru, willing to obtain Satella's love, but Subaru takes out the gospel and throws it at Beetlejuice, distracting him, and then writes in blood on the last page that his end has come. And this time, the Archbishop finally dies. After that, Subaru and Otto arrive at the battlefield, where Will and the others clear the way for him to reach Emilia. Meanwhile, after finding out everything Subaru has done so far, Emilia wonders why he does it. Suddenly, the carriage stops abruptly and Subaru gets on it and takes the firestones that are hidden, and just before leaving, he confesses to Emilia that he loves her, and then rides to the carcass of the great white whale and throws the firestones there, while remembering the promise he made to Emilia to save her, and at that moment, the firestones explode. After the explosion, Emilia comes to his aid, and when he wakes up, he is lying on her lap. Subaru is relieved to see that everything and everyone is fine, feeling that he has finally woken up from a nightmare, returning to a magnificent reality. Emilia asks him the reason for all this once again, since she still doesn't understand why he says that she saved him if she hasn't done anything for him, when it is Subaru who always saves her. He is honest with her, telling her that he was wrong and that he used her as an excuse and self-satisfaction, justifying his actions, saying that they were for her. Although everything he did until now had other reasons, one thing was certain, and that is that he wanted to protect her because he loves her. This moves Emilia to the point of tears. Until now, no one had told her I love you, and she is even more surprised when Subaru confesses his feelings to her, swearing that despite being so similar to the witch, he loves her. He doesn't care that she doesn't have an answer for him, because he will win her heart no matter what. This makes Emilia even more happy, thanking him for saving her. In the carriages, Subaru is next to Emilia and Petra, and the little girl is trying to win her place with him, challenging Emilia, declaring that she will not lose to her, and the same goes for Emilia. Meanwhile, Subaru can only express how grateful he is to everyone who helped him, including Rem. Thinking about Rem, he realizes that he should tell Emilia that Rem loves him. But to his dismay, Emilia doesn't know who Rem is. Meanwhile, Rem is with Crush on the carriages that carry the wounded, talking about how much Subaru has helped them, but suddenly, the carriages are attacked by a mysterious man, whom they do not know, but he does know Crush. He is the Archbishop of the Sin of Greed, Regulus. She starts to attack him, but he returns them and cuts off her arm, leaving her very injured, and Rem immediately begins to heal her. Suddenly, another mysterious and crazy guy appears, the Archbishop of the Sin of Gluttony, Lai. He expresses his great satisfaction at finally satisfying his hunger, as he did not expect to find people who could truly defeat a monster that devastated the kingdom for more than 400 years. Although Regulus does not wish to fight, Rem gets up and is ready to face them until her hero, Subaru, arrives, but she is easily defeated by Lai, and Regulus gives her the final blow. At night, Subaru, Emilia, and the rest of the Ebicus arrive at Crush's mansion, where they should meet Crush, Rem, and the wounded, but to their surprise, there are many others very injured, and no one knows who Rem is. Subaru becomes desperate and manages to find her among the wounded, but she is unconscious, and no matter how hard the healers do, she does not wake up. Then Subaru sees his sword and decides to start over to save Rem and stabs himself. He wakes up and is back in the carriage with Emilia. The first thing Subaru does is ask her about Rem, but to his horror, she still doesn't know who Rem is. After that, they arrive at Crush's mansion to meet with the injured, and Subaru takes the unconscious Rem to a room. In that moment, Puck appears and tells him what happened. It turns out that the Archbishop of Gluttony is capable of eating someone's life and name, causing others to forget that person. And just before leaving, he tasks Subaru with taking care of Emilia while he is gone. Upon leaving Rem's room, Subaru finds Crush, who does not have many memories due to Lie devouring her arm. Shortly after, the two of them meet with Felix, Will, and Emilia to talk about the situation. After Subaru explains what happened with the Archbishop of Gula, Will and Felix say that the capital also has some cases of memory loss. Felix is not happy with the situation and says that Emilia is to blame because she is the target of the witch worshippers. But Subaru says that the culprits are the cult, no Emilia, and Crush agrees with him. However, Felix suggests that the alliance they have between Crush's faction and Emilia be dissolved, because he does not want her lady to get hurt more than she already is, and besides, she can no longer fight. However, Crush wants to continue with the alliance since she knows that her only option is to fight, to at least have a chance to recover her memories, trusting the people in front of her even if she does not know them, which moves Felix, who begins to cry profusely, and everyone decides to continue with the alliance between the two factions. Later, Subaru goes to Rem's room, and after a moment, Emilia also enters. She knows that although she doesn't remember her, Rem is someone important, and Subaru suffers for having lost her. He starts to cry, but she hugs him and asks him to let her help him carry that pain. Through tears, Subaru vows to bring Rem back. The next morning, Subaru and Emilia say goodbye to Crush. Although she does not remember them, she is sure they will see each other again soon. On the way home, Emilia and Subaru realize that they have become close, although Emilia does not want to tell him her secrets. When they arrive at the village in Roswell's territory, they realize that Roswell and the other refugees have not yet returned from the sanctuary, and Emilia tells him that she does not know where it is because it is a secret base. So Otto takes them to the Roswell mansion, and the strangeness does not end since Puck does not respond to Emilia's call, and the mansion has a new maid, Frederica. She had already worked there in the past. It turns out that Ram sent her a letter to ask for help because she couldn't do the work alone, and Subaru realizes that Ram was missing Rem, and she doesn't even know it. They ask her about Roswell and Ram, but Frederica doesn't know what Roswell is thinking about the situation, but she tells them that maybe the other spirit in the mansion knows it. So Subaru goes to find Beatrice since she is one of the few people Roswell trusts. Subaru goes to the library and asks Beatrice about Roswell and shows her the Gospel of Beetlejuice, telling her that he killed his owner. Beatrice recognizes the Gospel and becomes tearful, saying that Juice has left her behind. Subaru asks her what she is talking about, but she changes the subject and asks him what he did with his witch factor. But Subaru doesn't know what she's talking about, so Beatrice gets impatient and tells him to go to the sanctuary and find all the answers he's looking for. Subaru does not understand Beatrice's attitude, and she tells him that she is not his tool to use at his convenience and expels him from the library. Subaru returns to the hall and finds that Emilia was telling the others how incredible Subaru is. Then Frederica tells them that she knows where to find the sanctuary, but she cannot accompany them because she must take care of the mansion, so Otto will take them there, and Frederica warns them that they must be careful of Garfield. Days later, Subaru says goodbye to the sleeping Rem and promises to find a solution to wake her up. Then he meets Petra in her new maid uniform. She will now work at the mansion. Since he has no one else to trust, Subaru asks her to take care of Rem and Beatrice while he is away. Just before leaving, Frederica gives Emilia the pendant with which they can pass through the barrier to the sanctuary, and Petra gives a white handkerchief to Subaru to wish him a safe journey. As Emilia and Subaru leave, Frederica takes out a letter saying that she has followed Roswell's orders by sending Emilia to the Lost Forest, praying that she can pass through it safely. The Lost Forest of Clemeldy has a barrier that protects the sanctuary from outsiders. This barrier makes everyone get lost easily, which is why they need the pendant. But the most worrying thing is that Emilia has not yet been able to contact Puck, but she still has other contracts with minor spirits. Suddenly, the pendant begins to glow, so Subaru takes it and tries to throw it. But when he takes it from Emilia, she faints and he is sent to another place, encountering an elf. Following her, he reaches to some dark ruins, entering and being transported again to another place where a woman Echidna, the Witch of Greed, was waiting for him. Echidna invites him to have tea, and Subaru drinks it without hesitation because he knows that if the witch wanted him dead, she would have done it already. Echidna asks him what he wants to know. She is the Witch of Greed for knowledge, but he asks nothing, so she bombards him with information about other witches, and in the end says that Satella, the worst of them all, killed them to use them as a sustenance and became the enemy of the entire world. Suddenly, Subaru feels something strange in his chest. because the tea he drank stimulates his sloth witch factor and strengthens his resistance, and she tells him that now they can talk more calmly. It turns out that when he killed the Archbishop of Sloth, his witch factor lodged in Subaru's body, and thanks to that, he was able to enter the witch's graveyard unharmed since Echidna's soul is there in the sanctuary. Subaru realizes that the sanctuary is near the ruins and asks her to return him to where he was with Emilia, but she keeps insisting that he ask her something. Echidna cannot believe that he lets her go so easily since many important people want to talk to her because of her extensive knowledge. So before dismissing him, she orders him not to tell anyone what the two of them spoke and says that she will give him the right to face the sanctuary trials. He doesn't know what she's talking about, but she says he will know when is necessary. And then she kicks him out of her dimension, returning him to the same place as before. When Subaru wakes up, he has the feeling that someone told him something, and when he leaves the ruins, he finds Otto being attacked by Garfield, whom Subaru stops by mentioning that he knows Frederica. After the situation calms down, Garfield gets into the carriage as he will show them where the sanctuary is. After that, Emilia wakes up. Garfield explains to them that the reason she fainted is because the pendant reacted to the barrier, which only demi-humans with mixed blood live like her and Garfield. When they arrive at the sanctuary, they realize that it is not what they thought. It is rather a bunch of people who have mixed blood who live in precarious situations. Once there, they find Ram, who greets them cordially while Otto goes to park. Subaru is not able to look Ram in the eyes as he feels strange that Ram does not ask him about Rem. Guilt consumes him, so Emilia intervenes and tells Ram to take them to see Roswell. Shortly after, they go to see Roswell, whom they find very injured, and since Emilia feels too restless in the sanctuary, he explains to them that it is Echidna's cemetery, where she passed away. This place is taken care of by him since his family has been in charge of doing so for a long time, and they have certain relationships with the witch. Then Roswell tells them that they have not been able to leave here with the villagers because they are held hostage, and the reason why he is so injured is explained by Garfield. He tells them that it is because of the barrier and the trials of the cemetery. Every time someone enters the barrier, if they are of mixed blood, they cannot leave the place, so they all are trapped there. The only one who can break the barrier is Emilia, since she is a half-blood, since someone of pure blood like Roswell cannot break it and everyone depends on her to get out of it. The only condition is that they offer a home to those who have been trapped. After that, Subaru goes to where the villagers he loves so much are held hostages and tells them what is happening and says that Emilia will be the one to tear down the barrier. Seeing her, everyone begins to distrust her and an old woman approaches her, doubtful that Emilia just wants to help them for the sake of it. After Subaru encourages her, Emilia promises that she will free them. She says that she does it only to reunite the families that were separated. After all, she just wants to be her friend. The old woman becomes convinced of her sincerity, and like everyone else, they trust her to help them. At night, Emilia and the others go to the cemetery to do the trial. The crypt begins to glow, and Garfield says that this means that Emilia is qualified to do it, but after she enters, the crypt stops shining, indicating that something is not going well. Then, Subaru runs towards the crypt, to which it glows, indicating that he can enter too. Ram and Garfield do not understand why, but Subaru enters without problems and finds Emilia passed out, but before he can help her, he hears a voice saying that he must face his past first and faints shortly. When he wakes up, he is in his old room and his father is jumping on top of him playfully. Subaru is confused but doesn't have time to think as his father begins to put wrestling holds on him, but he isn't far behind and returns it to him. Suddenly, his mother arrives to stop them, calling them to breakfast. After breakfast, Subaru feels a pain in his chest, so he goes to his room and waits for the hour to pass so he doesn't go to class, but the pain comes back and he doesn't understand what's happening. Then his father enters his room and asks him if he likes a girl, but Subaru doesn't answer, and his dad suggests going for a walk since Subaru won't go to school. He wants to have a father-son talk. As they walk, Subaru feels a pain in his chest again, so they stop for him to sit down, and his father insists on asking him if he likes a girl. Suddenly, Subaru hears someone calling him, but his father heard nothing and asks him once again if he likes a girl, so Subaru forces him to ask him why he doesn't go to school, but his father says that he doesn't think school is that important. Although his father does everything to try to calm him down, Subaru continues to have chest pains, and he manages to see Emilia's silhouette, who thanks him for always saving her. At first, Subaru cannot remember her, but slowly the image of her becomes clearer, and with it, he manages to realize what is happening. Subaru recovers and tells his dad that he likes a girl and begins to be honest with him. Subaru tells him that he always expected them to call him out for being weak and useless, since when he was a kid, he was a great runner like his father and smart. Little by little, as he grew up, he stopped being that way and he stopped trying too, and he concentrated on making the others around him laugh. Over time, he became afraid that because he didn't do crazier and crazier things, others would stop spending time with him. It wasn't until much later that it occurred to him to look back and realize that no one was with him anymore. Everything got worse when he grew up and people kept comparing him to his father Kenichi, putting even more pressure on him. Upon reaching middle school and high school, his debut and relationships were quickly ruined, so he thought it would be better if he just stopped going. And after 3 months, he dropped out of school. However, what he feared most was that at some point his parents would hate him, but they would never do something like that, and Subaru realizes why he enjoys being in the other world so much, since for Rem and Emilia, he is not son of his father, but Subaru, only Subaru Natsuki. This makes his father happy, seeing that his son has not given up, and even if he does not like going to classes, he trusts that he will take care of him and his mother when they are old. But when Subaru hears that, he bursts into tears because he knows he won't be there when that happens, but even so, his father comforts him for having overcome his worries. Then they separate, and before Subaru leaves, his father assures him that he can get whatever he wants, since he is his son. Subaru goes to his house and puts on his uniform to go to school, and his mother decides to accompany him and reveals that she has always knew how he felt, and she always wanted to help him, but it seemed like nothing worked, but now she realized that Subaru has people who have done him good. Then she tells him that he doesn't have to be like his father, since he is not just his son, only half, the other half comes from her, so he can strive in his own way and be him. After that, the two say goodbye, but before doing so, Subaru warns her that he will go away, but he will always think of them. His mother consoles him by telling him that the beginning or the process does not matter, but rather how he ends, leaving this enigma as his homework. In the end, and just like the night before Subaru was transported to the other world, she bids him farewell, asking him to take care of himself, and Subaru finally leaves for school, where Echidna was waiting for him. Subaru now remembers Echidna, and she tells him that it was better to play with his memories than trust him to keep their secret tea party. Then Echidna reveals to Subaru that everything he has seen so far is an artificial world created from his memories. She scoffs that everything he saw is nothing more than his own selfish and convenient desires, but Subaru knows his parents well, even though they aren't the real ones. He knows they love him. This is how he finally concludes the first of the 3 trials of the sanctuary, and before leaving, Subaru thanks Echidna for giving him this opportunity to leave his past behind. Then he leaves promising that Emilia will be the one to release the sanctuary barrier. When he wakes up, he finds Emilia lying on the floor and apparently having visions of her trial, where someone is blaming her for something, and she calls her dad and then Puck. After that, he takes her to the cabin to rest. Because Emilia could not endure the trial, Subaru, Garfield, and Otto begin to devise new ways to pass the barrier without having to liberate the sanctuary. Otto suggests that due to the fainting of those with mixed blood, those of pure blood can carry them charging through the barrier. Suddenly, Ryuzu, the elf that Subaru met when he arrived at the sanctuary, enters the cabin and tells them that this is a bad idea because if someone with mixed blood tries to leave, their soul is repelled from their body and only a corpse remains. She also reveals to them that she and Garfield cannot free the sanctuary. They can try the trials but do not open the barrier, since that is part of the contract that was made long ago in the sanctuary. Later, Subaru goes to sleep in a chair next to Emilia's bed, and when she wakes up, he tells her that she can try the trials again in the next night, but she's not very enthusiastic. The next day, Ram tells Subaru that not everyone is in favor of liberating the sanctuary. There is a faction that does not agree and who believe that dealing with foreigners should be minimal. They could try to stop or harm Emilia, so she warns him to watch her and be careful of her. Furthermore, the evidence so far suggests that there is some kind of conspiracy for this, starting with Frederica giving the pendant to Emilia, and she narrowly escaped thanks to Subaru. At night, Emilia tries the trials again. Meanwhile, Subaru talks to Garfield about Frederica, but Garfield doesn't tell him much about her. After that, Emilia leaves the crypt crying without having passed the trials again. Later, Subaru meets with Rosewall and Ram. Subaru complains to him for not being present at the mansion when the attacks of the witch worshippers began, but Roswell congratulates him for having done well in his role as Emilia's knight, which angers him. Subaru tries to punch him, but Ram stops him, and Subaru accidentally tells her that what happened to Rem is his fault, but Ram tells him that he doesn't know anyone with that name. Then Roswell reveals to Subaru the reason for not having been at the mansion to help. If he had been there, neither Subaru nor Emilia would have received credit for their efforts. Roswell had faith that Subaru would manage to solve everything, that he would find a way to move forward and help Emilia in his own way, since after all, his main objective is to make Emilia queen, and for that, he will use Subaru like an accomplice, knowing how good he is at it. At night, he meets again with Emilia, whom he consoles for not having been able to pass the test yet, but asks her to try again, to which she knows she cannot refuse, not when he asks her and knowing that is her duty. The next morning, Subaru prepares to take the villagers of Roswell territory back to their homes. Ram tells Subaru that if he is worried about seeing Frederica, he should go to Beatrice and give her a message from Rosewall. Shortly after, the carriages leave and Garfield tells Subaru that he knows that he has managed to pass the test, and although he wants Emilia to overcome her past, Garfield is worried that she is suffering with each attempt, which leaves Subaru thoughtful. Finally, he gives her a pendant to show to Frederica. Once Subaru arrives at the mansion, he realizes that no one is there. He runs desperately to Rem's room, but before finding her, Elsa murders him. When he wakes up, he realizes that he is in the sanctuary, at the same moment that his trial ended, and he wonders what Elsa was doing in the mansion and how to stop it. Then he sees Emilia wake up from her trial and hugs her when she starts to cry, and they return to the cabin. Then, when everyone gathers at night, Subaru announces that he was able to pass the trial, so he suggests taking it instead of Emilia, to which everyone opposes, especially Emilia, since she believes that he does not trust her. When they are alone, Garfield clarifies that he doesn't want him to do it because they are supposed to let Emilia be the one to solve it, and with that, help her advance on the path to her throne. Since Subaru cannot convince them to let him do the trials, he goes to Rosewall to ask him to take the villagers home so he can go to the mansion as soon as possible since he distrusts Frederica. Although Rosewall knows that Subaru has no chance against her, he still sends him to the mansion instead. The next morning, he leaves a letter to Emilia apologizing, and before he and Ram leave, Garfield says goodbye to them. But this time, he does not give his pendant to Subaru, but to Ram because he trusts her more in this timeline. The two head towards the mansion, and while they ride, he begins to tell her about her twin sister Rem. When they finally arrive at Roswell's mansion, Petra greets them and Subaru hugs her, relieved that she is safe and sound. He asks about Frederica, and Petra tells them that she is checking the village's protective barriers. After that, Subaru takes Ram to Rem's room, and Ram asks him to leave them alone. When Frederica returns, Subaru shows her Garfield's pendant and tells her that he realized that she is Garfield's older sister and asks her why the stone she gave Emilia was going to teleport them, but she says that she doesn't know what he's talking about. Subaru tries to accuse her that she supports the faction of those who do not want to be released from the sanctuary. At that moment, Ram arrives and joins the conversation. She lets Subaru know that Frederica cannot tell them anything due to her oath, and therefore Subaru needs to give her an excuse to tell them the truth. But suddenly, Elsa appears with Petra as a hostage, so Ram and Frederica team up and manage to rescue her from Elsa. But the woman launches a needle attack on them, and they fall out of the window. Elsa is very powerful even for Frederica, so Ram suggests that they run away and leave Beatrice and Rem in the mansion as sacrifices, despite knowing that Rem is her sister. For Ram, the sleeping girl is just an empty shell. Subaru, dismayed by Ram's coldness, refuses to leave them there, but Ram tells him that if she remembered anything about her sister, she would do the same to save him, but Subaru insists to save them. So Frederica decides to go confront Elsa, turning into a complete beast, ready to fight. Meanwhile, Subaru decides to go save Rem and Beatrice. Then Petra and Ram go with him to the mansion, but they are attacked by a witch fiend, which chases them until it corners them in a room. Ram distracts the witch fiend to give Petra and Subaru time to go find Rem, but Subaru is too injured to do so. Then Petra helps him, and after bandaging each other's wounds, the two go out to look for Rem, but they are attacked before moving forward. Subaru remains unconscious, and when he wakes up, he is very badly injured and sees with horror that Petra died in the explosion. After that, he goes in search of Elsa, trying to get information about why she is there. But in the end, when he is about to be, Beatrice saves him at the last moment and locks him in the magical library. Seeing what she has done, Subaru is enraged because if she had not saved him, he could have revived at his last save point. Suddenly, Subaru sees a gospel and asks her if she is a cultist, and Beatrice takes the gospel and embraces it as if it were something very precious to her. Things only get worse when Beatrice gets upset with him and clarifies that all of her actions are only done because they appear in that book and nothing more. Suddenly, Elsa arrives and finally kills him before Beatrice's sad gaze. As soon as Subaru wakes up, he is relieved to see that he is in the crypt with Emilia like last time, so he repeats his path again, until the moment when he must talk to Rosewall, but Otto arrives to talk to him. Noticing that Subaru is too calm, although Emilia is having a difficult time for not being able to pass the trial. But the truth is that Subaru is worried about Emilia. But now he can be worried and still think rationally about his next steps. At that moment, Garfield arrives, taking Subaru to talk alone, and on the way, Subaru tries to ask him about Frederica, telling him that he knows that they are siblings and asks him how she was able to leave the barrier while he and the others were trapped, but Garfield remains silent. They reach an open field, where Ryuzu is waiting for them. She wants to talk to Subaru, and asks him what he wants to do with the information about Frederica. Subaru says that he just wants to use it to get everyone out of there, but he also clarifies that he doesn't want to get Emilia out to avoid the trial, but instead trusts her to confront her past on her own terms later. Then Ryuzu reveals to him that the barrier stops the half-blood if they have half human blood and half non-human blood, but if the concentration of either of the two is lower, the barrier is not activated, and that is why Frederica was able to escape, because she and Garfield have different dads. This only bothers Garfield more since his sister left the sanctuary 10 years ago and she never visited them again. Subaru decides to tell them that he was able to pass the trial and suggests doing the remaining 2 trials in Emilia's place, but as soon as he tells them that, Garfield grabs him by the neck and locks him in a part of the sanctuary that no one knows and starting to beat him because he feels the witch's scent on him. And he thinks that Subaru wants to prevent Emilia from doing the trials because he is a member of the witch cult. So he leaves him tied up and locked up and gagged so he doesn't try to murder himself, since if the people discover his it will realize that it was his fault. At night, everyone starts looking for Subaru, But no one finds him, and Otto realizes that Garfield is responsible, so Garfield threatens him to keep quiet. Meanwhile, Subaru spends 2 days locked up, and then someone comes to feed him. The next day, Otto arrives to save him, telling him that 3 days have passed since his disappearance and Emilia has been doing the trial non-stop and without success, and she is increasingly depressed by Subaru's disappearance. He doesn't know much more because he has been hiding from Garfield, so he can look for him. Subaru is happy that he saved him, although he still doesn't understand why, and Otto says that they are friends, impressing Subaru to hear that he has a friend and thanks him for saving him. They leave the confinement, and Otto takes him to Ram, who is waiting for them. Subaru is surprised to see her, and Ram says that she is following Roswell's orders. Otto wants to escape right now, but he wants to do what he tried to do 3 days ago. So he goes to Roswell and asks him if Beatrice is a member of the cultists, since he saw that she embraced a gospel, but Roswell tells him that that book was not a gospel. It is a book that can predict the future, and there are only 2 in the world. Subaru is relieved to know the truth, and Roswell tells him the key for her to trust him, giving him 2 sentences for him to say to Beatrice, and she will become his ally. But before leaving, Subaru asks Roswell if he is their enemy, to which he responds that he is an ally of all of them. After that, Subaru meets with Otto and Ram ready to leave, but the main problem they have is that there is only 1 dragon for the 3 of them. But suddenly, Garfield arrives full of anger, ready to finish off Subaru. He doesn't plan to let him out of the barrier, easily being willing to fight, offering him to surrender or fight him, so Ram distracts him, while Otto takes Subaru on the dragon, being guided by the people of the village who like their way to help them escape. However, Garfield is too strong and chases them as a giant beast. Seeing this, Subaru loses all hope of getting out of this alive, offering himself to Garfield as a sacrifice. But just before doing so, Otto intervenes and is cut in 2 by Garfield. Then the rest of the villagers who love Subaru stand between Subaru and Garfield, long enough for the badly injured Dragon Patrashi to throw Subaru out of the barrier. Suddenly, his pendant shines and he is transported to the prison where Garfield had him locked up, and he faints. When he wakes up, he doesn't know how long he has slept, but when he comes out, he sees that the entire sanctuary is covered in snow and there is no one anywhere. He wanders aimlessly and comes across a strange rabbit, but when Subaru approaches, the rabbit bits off his hand, and suddenly, a bunch of monster rabbits appear and eat him. Subaru wakes up and realizes that he is again at the end of the first trial, and Emilia is passed out next to him. So Subaru is on the verge of madness and begins to hit his head against the ground, and a voice tells him that he can do the second trial of the graveyard. Suddenly, Subaru is transported once again to Echidna's tea party, where he feels calmer due to the nullification of his witch factor because the tea she gave him last time. Upon seeing her, Subaru immediately asks her to change her last time's condition and to allow him to remember her, making her feel somewhat impressed by him and his intensity, so she accepts. Then Subaru realizes that she seems to know some things about him, so he decides to test her by telling her that he can come back from the dead. And nothing happens, so he starts repeating it over and over again until he gets tired, venting and crying because he can finally tell someone. Echidna comforts him, hugging him and telling him that she has always been watching him, but now she just wants to listen to him and know everything he has been through, since she is the Witch of Greed and she wants to know everything. Echidna is horrified to find out everything that has happened to Subaru, feeling somewhat upset with the Witch of Envy, but although she knows many things, not even she knows why Satella is so interested in Subaru. Then she says that his gift for returning from death could have no limits, so he is condemned to repeat the same path over and over again, and perhaps lose people he sacrifices in each attempt, since Echidna thinks that the only objective of his gift is to keep him alive. Then Subaru asks her about the rabbits, and she tells him that they are the Great Rabbit, a bunch of witch fiends made by the ancient witch of gluttony, Daphne. She created the 3 great witch fiends that inhabit the world until now: the white whale, the great rabbit, and the black snake. Although the whale is stronger, the great rabbit is much more difficult to eradicate since there are many of them, and in wanting to satisfy its hunger, the only thing they leave behind is a deserted field like the one Subaru saw before he died. Upon hearing that, Subaru says that he wants to talk to the Witch of Gluttony, but Echidna says that this is dangerous since it can severely damage his mind, since in this plane of reality in which they are, death does not exist and the slightest mistake could cause him to become disabled. But Subaru is not afraid and decides to try. Then Echidna advises him not to free Daphne or look her in the eyes and leaves, but to Subaru's surprise, who appears as Typhon, the Witch of Pride, she tells him that if there is sin, there is pain. Then she tears off his arm, but Subaru doesn't even notice, so she says that he considers himself a sinner and leaves after destroying his entire body. Shortly after, the Minerva Witch of Wrath arrives, and with her blows, she ends up healing and rebuilding Subaru's body. She also leaves quickly, leaving Subaru confused, and then Daphne, the Witch of Gluttony, appears. In the end, Daphne appears, who quickly becomes interested in Subaru, since he has a very pleasant smell. He asks her why she created such destructive creatures. Daphne tells him that her main reason was because the witch fiends are so big that if you hunt them, you can feed many people. Likewise, the Great Rabbit. Those rabbits multiply infinitely, so no one would go hungry if they hunted them, but she gave them the ability to defend themselves and eat others back, because eating and being eaten is a natural law for her, and Subaru agrees a little with that, but still wants to eliminate the rabbits. Then Daphne tells him that the great rabbit has a hive mind, so they are not very smart since they only chase places that have a lot of mana concentration, so he can set a trap for them and eliminate them all at once. After that, Echidna and her tea set return, and Subaru thanks her for letting him talk to Daphne. But suddenly, he feels like he's about to wake up, so Echidna says that maybe he'll be the one to help Emilia get over her trial, while Subaru doesn't want Emily to get hurt more by taking that trial over and over again. Before leaving, he asks how he can contact her, and she says that he must shout at the top of his lungs 3 times, that he wants to know something, or he can also see her in the second trial. Furthermore, he still has to pay, so he doesn't forget all this, and Echidna uses Petra's handkerchief, acknowledging the girl's existence and earning the right to meddle a little in this mess. Then, before saying goodbye to Subaru, she reveals that next time there is something she would like to tell him. Upon waking up, Subaru remembers everything, but realizes that Emilia is not with him, and when he leaves, a huge shadow is flooding the sanctuary. It is the Witch of Envy, who approaches him, confessing that she loves him and hugs him. Fortunately for Subaru, Garfield arrives and rescues him. The witch is not interested in them, and she's heading towards Roswell's mansion, and Subaru is not going to allow it. Garfield and Subaru flee through the forest, and Garfield tells him that everyone has been swallowed by the shadow, including Emilia, but not everything is lost. Garfield has a plan. He will use some Ryuzu clones to eliminate the witch. Thus, he carries out an attack together with them, but the witch is much stronger and kills him easily. When the witch sees Subaru, she just keeps saying that she loves him, asking him to feel the same way about her, but he rejects her, and the shadow engulfs him. Subaru sees faces and hears many voices at once, and fortunately, he remembers Petra's handkerchief that Echidna touched and now has some of the magic, so he uses it as a knife to stab himself. Before closing his eyes, he sees Emilia's face on the witch and promises to save her. Subaru wakes up once again in the sanctuary next to Emilia and is surprised to see his hands tremble when he wants to touch her. He is now afraid of Emilia because he associates her with the witch, and when she wakes up, she sees him so affected and hugs him while he cries desperately. Upon leaving the sanctuary, Ram, Otto, and Garfield receive them. Even Garfield is not hostile in this timeline. So Subaru redoes his entire path, but now he asks Ram to distract Garfield while he goes to do something behind his back, and she accepts in exchange for 10 favors. After that, Subaru begins to explore the forest, because during the time he was trapped in the shadow, he was able to see the memories of the witch's victims. He reaches some hidden catacombs and uses Frederica's pendant as a key, entering a room where the real Ryuzu is trapped in a crystal. Suddenly, copies of her arrive to stop Subaru, but he asks them for help, and they accept. At her cabin, Ryuzu's copy tells him that the clones are soulless copies, as this place was created by Echidna for the purpose of experimentation. Her objective was to ensure that the memories, personality, and soul of an individual could be transferred to an artificial copy, a method in search of immortality, but she failed, since she could not put her soul in the copies, but she was able to create several Ryuzu, which are who Subaru knows now. This explains why Echidna was so happy to see him, because Subaru is theoretically immortal, something she wanted to achieve. The copy Ryuzu also tells him that she is one of the first clones, but has managed to find a way to live despite being created only as a copy, and she took the name of Bilma. She also reveals to him that he is an apostle of greed, since he has a part of Echidna inside him, since the tea she served him had her bodily fluids in it. This gives him the power to control copies of Ryuzu. Then Subaru realizes that Garfield can also control the clones. That means he also did the trials. In the end, the two say goodbye for now, with a promise to talk again. In his way, Subaru meets Emilia, who is quite worried, because she has not been able to pass the trial, and the fact that Puck is not with her distresses her even more. Then Subaru tells her that he fervently trusts that she can achieve it. That confidence gives Emilia a lot of courage. Before dawn, Subaru leaves a letter for Emilia, telling her that he will leave since he does not want her to feel bad about his departure. He heads to Roswell's mansion, and on his way he finds Garfield, who stops him, distrusting him for having the witch's scent. Subaru mocks that despite knowing that Garfield didn't do anything to him until now. Garfield explodes with anger and corners him, but Subaru tells him that he knows he's hiding something, making Garfield let him go. So Subaru promises that he won't do anything bad to him or the sanctuary. However, Garfield does not believe that he is capable of helping them, since he does not believe that he knows what true suffering is like, something that Subaru he knows very well, and that is why he goes to the mansion, because he is the only one who should know hell. Upon arriving, he thanks Petra for her white handkerchief since it helped him a lot. While Frederica and Petra carry Rem's body to the village, he goes to the library to talk to Beatrice, who is waiting for him to release her from her contract. Beatrice tells Subaru that she is somewhat relieved since he is the one who will end her contract. However, he ends up taking the book from her and discovers that the pages are blank since some time now. It has not written anything about Beatrice's future, and she assumes that means that her time is over. It turns out that she is a spirit hired by Echidna in charge of collecting knowledge in the library. However, she tells him that she has been waiting for 400 years for the person to free her from this contract and wants Subaru to do it. He refuses and prefers to find a way to free her without harms her, but she begs Subaru to void her contract by killing her, or to prioritize her and save her first, but she knows he won't choose her. Suddenly, also arrives and mocks, saying that his objective is in the village, so Subaru flees with Beatrice, because he needs to find out who is behind all this and also save Rem, Petra, and Frederica, who were going to the village. But on the way, they meet Meili, one of the girls from the village. She is a witch fiend tamer, and she is the one involved in the attacks, and the little girl with her sweet voice tells him that she eliminated Petra and the other 2 girls. At that moment, Elsa also appears and begins a battle against Beatrice, in which she manages to defeat Elsa. But when she is about to attack Meili, Subaru tries to prevent it because she is just a little girl, but that brief distraction, it is enough for Elsa to recover and execute Beatrice. Subaru is horrified by the turn of the situation, and Elsa pokes out his eye because she dislikes his gaze. Before Beatrice disappears, she transports Subaru to the sanctuary, where he finds Emilia. She was waiting for him and runs to hug him. Saying that she felt lonely without him, she tells him that she was afraid that he would hate her for being unable to pass the trial. So she tries a lot and still can't do it, and finally she confesses that she loves him. This surprises Subaru, and when he sees her better, he realizes that Emilia is not well, her eyes are lost and shadowy. He goes outside and sees that it is snowing. Then Garfield realizes that something is not right and turns on Subaru, but he makes him understand that someone else is behind all this. Someone made Emilia believe that she can't do anything without him because there is no possible way for her to tell him that she loves him. Subaru suspects that Roswell is the one who is making it snow, so he goes with Garfield to talk to him, and Roswell, although he does not admit it, does not deny it either, making Garfield even more angry with him. So Garfield approaches him and threatening him. Suddenly, Ram stands between Roswell and Garfield to protect her lord, but Roswell takes advantage of the fact that Ram is in the middle and crosses her with an arm that at the same time crosses Garfield's body. Subaru is surprised to see this, but Roswell reveals that he has realized what's going on with Subaru, so he shows him his book, the second of the 2 that can predict the future. Only by seeing his face, Roswell realizes that Beatrice was able to fulfill her most cherished wish unlike him, but he cannot tell Subaru what it is. It is something that he constantly seeks to achieve, and to do so, he needed to make it snow, so that everyone in the place would be affected, and he could isolate Emilia. All of this would only bring him closer to his goal. Then he begins to beat Subaru, and although he has more questions for Roswell, the Great Rabbit arrives and Roswell goes outside taking Subaru with him. Roswell explains to Subaru that even though he can start over, Roswell can't, so he will pass away right now. Subaru tells him that he is a very strange guy. Then Roswell explains to him that, to be like him, he needs to find what he loves most and protect it, and finally lets himself be eaten by the hungry rabbits. Shortly after that, Subaru arrives with Emilia, lying on her lap, and then dies from all of his injuries. Subaru wakes up again in the sanctuary with Emilia next to him. Subaru now knows that the problem with Emilia is having abandoned her, swearing that this time he will save everyone. The main problem now is Roswell because he knows about his looping, so the only thing he can think of is to go to Echidna, because there are many things he doesn't know, and he needs answers. He goes to the crypt and calls her 3 times, but he faints and sees the timeline where he cut his own neck when he found out about Rem, and everyone was too distressed by his death, especially Emilia, who cries profusely because he promised that he would always be by her side. Subaru wakes up and a voice tells him that he must see the unexpected presence, and Subaru now sees his dead body when Felix and Julius killed him because Beetlejuice possessed him. Emilia arrives and cries over his corpse, while Julius wishes he could have called him his friend. Afterwards, he sees his broken body from his jumping off the cliff when he promised Ram that he would save Rem. This time it is Beatrice who cries because she lost the one who was supposed to free her. Then he sees the world that Puck froze, where Reinhardt arrives and executes Puck. So on. Subaru witnesses all the worlds he abandoned after dying. His mind is practically broken, but suddenly, Rem arrives to comfort him. He is very sorry for having left behind so many worlds, for having let the people die that he loves so many times, believing that if he were better or stronger or smarter, he perhaps could have prevented it. Rem hugs him and tells him that he can rest and stop trying so hard, and when she's about to kiss him, Subaru realizes that she is not Rem, because the real Rem is exigent and demanding with him. Although she loves him, she would never tell him to give up. Then Rem takes the form of another girl. She is Carmilla, the Witch of Lust, who was sent by Echidna to distract him. But before he can ask him more, Subaru is left breathless due to Carmilla's power. Suddenly, he appears at Echidna's tea party, who explains that she sent Carmilla to help him, since the trial he was doing would have broken his mind completely. Those timelines that he saw are fictitious, but only Satella knows if those worlds continue without him because she was the one who gave him that power. Subaru is horrified by that possibility, but she comforts him by saying that he should focus more on the fact that he has been able to save everyone despite the adversity. However, to encourage him more and in the process help him, she offers him to make a contract. She can help him whenever he encounters an insurmountable obstacle, in exchange for him sharing the return of with her. But before they close the contract, Minerva arrives to stop them. But not only her, all the other witches come to it, telling Subaru that despite not lying to him, Echidna hides many things, warning him that this contract has an ulterior motive. Subaru asks Echidna why she wants to make a contract with him, and she recognizes that the only thing she wants is for him to give her his entire being in order to satisfy her greed and thirst for knowledge, because although she will guide him to his best path, she will use his return to satisfy her curiosity, exploring all possible paths, since she has been behind Subaru's gift all this time. Subaru recognizes that Echidna has been good to him all this time, but she is too childish and shallow. So before accepting the contract, he asks her who Beatrice is waiting for, but not even Echidna knows. Since that person has to be chosen by Beatrice herself, Subaru cannot believe what he hears, and Echidna says that Beatrice's own indecision is what led her to wait 400 years. This makes Subaru finally decide to go to Beatrice to free her and not make the contract with Echidna. But before he can do anything, Satella arrives at the tea party. Satella begins to say that she loves Subaru like always does, but ends up being rejected again. For Subaru, she is nothing more than the woman who caused everything bad that happens to him, such as him coming back from the dead or always ending badly, to which the other witches complain about this, making him look childish because he thinks he is the only one who suffers alone, and they complain that he is so ungrateful to Satella, since it is thanks to her that he has been able to try and save others time and time again. Subaru cannot stand what the witches tell him and bites his tongue, but Minerva tries to prevent it, but is being stopped by Typhon and Sekhmet, the sloth witch. Meanwhile, Satella approaches him, telling him that he should want to save himself too. While this was happening, Subaru floated in the void, lamenting for having failed, but he hears the voices of Emilia and his friends who love him. He wakes up healed thanks to Minerva and says that he doesn't believe he has any value, since he can't do more than just end and restart everything. But Satella tells him that he has to love himself in order to feel the appreciation of others. Meanwhile, Echidna delights in seeing the reactions of the other witches because in their own way, each one helped Subaru and supported him when he needed it. However, he still does not understand them and continues to consider them witches. Echidna, seeing him recovered, offers him once again to be allies, to which Subaru rejects her again because, although he knows that he can use her to save others, he also knows that he wants to save himself, which she knows is something very dangerous and difficult, but also greedy, just like her. Furthermore, Subaru, although he now knows her true intentions, has not forgotten that she helped him and has not stopped being grateful to her. Then Echidna tells him that Garfield is afraid of the outside world, and to free him, he has to break the spell. Before leaving, Subaru thanks them for helping him move forward, and finally he approaches Satella, whom he thanks for giving him the opportunity to start from zero every time he dies, and thus save everyone, and she reminds him that he can count on others to get things done, that there are people who will mourn his death, and she hopes that one day he will come back to execute her, but Subaru, instead, promises to save her. Sometime later, he wakes up with his dragon and Otto, who took him out of the sanctuary, since they were worried about him, and Otto makes him realize that Petrash also has feelings and loves him. Subaru cries when he realizes that Satella was right in that. Then he wants to return to the crypt to do the second trial, but he is stopped because the crypt rejects him due to Echidna. After that, he goes to talk to Roswell and asks him if it is possible to break the barrier without passing the cemetery trial, but Roswell tells him that it is not possible, and quickly realizes that Subaru already knows that he knows about his gift. But unfortunately for Roswell, Subaru still does not have enough determination to be useful to him, since he wants to save them all, and not just Emilia. Then, Roswell decides to reveal that he sent the assassins to his mansion to corner him, so that Subaru decides to save Emilia alone. But Subaru is desperate when he realizes that there is no solution, so he gets on his knees and begs him not to execute the girls that are in the mansion, and in exchange he will do whatever he wants. But Roswell refuses, because only by cornering him, Subaru will become more determined to fulfill his own objective. As soon as he hears this, Subaru gets disturbed and runs away, staying in the forest without knowing what to do. Hours later, Otto arrives, asking him to take a deep breath, and then hits him and order him to stop acting strong in front of his friends. Otto continues beating Subaru. He tells Subaru that he doesn't need to do everything alone, not even he can do everything. But Subaru tells him that he once asked for help and it went wrong, but Otto reminds him that he never asked him for help and they are supposed to be friends. Subaru doesn't think Otto can even understand what he's been through, but he decides to tell him the truth anyway. After that, Subaru goes to Roswell, who is surprised to see Subaru so determined, and Subaru bets each of their wishes, promising that if they play together, then the other will have to give in to his wish because they want the same thing in the end, for Emilia to be the new ruler. Roswell, although surprised, ends up agreeing to the bet, promising to be an ally with Subaru in the future if he is able to save the mansion and Emilia, so he tells him that the snow will fall on the sanctuary and the mansion will be attacked within 3 days. He leaves ready to win the bet and says goodbye to Ram. She does not plan to leave Rosewa's side, but in her own way. She encourages him to overcome this. Then Otto arrives, who is ready to take care of everything and help Subaru, even knowing that he has everything to lose but fully trusts his friend and encourages him to go with Emilia. First, Subaru goes to where the crystal of the real Ryuzu is. Encountering a copy, she realizes what Subaru is planning and decides to help him, telling him that she is one of the first 4 copies of Ryuzu. Her name is Arma, different from the first one Subaru met in another life called Bilma. She tells him that the 4's bodies are made of mana, so they rotate among themselves, except for one Shima. In the past, Shima broke the rules by entering the cemetery to get Garfield out when he was doing the trials. Because of that, they both share memories that the others don't know, and after that, Shima was banished to live in the forest, although she continues to receive visits from Garfield. According to Arma, the real reason Garfield does not want to release the barrier is due to his mother, since most likely he saw something during the trial. Later, Subaru goes to Emilia's room to check on her, but finds her very scared and nervous about the trial. He asks her to vent to him because maybe he can help her. She tells him her story. A long time ago, she was trapped in ice until Puck found her and saved her from it. However, before being frozen, Emilia remembers nothing about herself as she gets panic attacks when remembering her parents, so Subaru comforts her so she can calm down. She continues her story, telling him that she lived in the frozen forest with Puck waiting for her parents to wake up from the ice, but it never happened. Then she met Roswell, who promised her that if she became queen, he would defrost all her loved ones. That is why she has always said that her reasons for participating in the royal selection are selfish, because she is not doing it for the nation, but for herself. Subaru tells her that her reasons are good ones and not selfish, so Emilia finally relaxes and she falls asleep. Seeing her, Subaru knows that the key to this is what she doesn't remember and decides to call the only one that knows what happened, Puck. Sometime later, Emilia wakes up and Puck appears to say goodbye to her. Since he has broken the contract he has with her, since their contract is broken, her memories will be released. Emilia begins to cry because she does not want Puck to abandon her, but Puck tells her that he leaves her in the hands of the one who loves her most after him, and the spirit fades away and Emilia faints when the contract ends. Meanwhile, Garfield and Arma talk about the broken contract between Puck and Emilia and worry about her and Subaru. At night, Emilia feels scared and alone and asks Subaru to stay with her at night and not let go of her hand. However, upon waking up, she finds that Subaru is gone, and like everyone she loves, she sees him as a liar. The next day, no one can find Emilia, and Garfield has no idea where she, Arma, or Subaru is, so he goes to where the real Ryuzu is and finds Otto, who was waiting for him. On the other hand, Subaru finally finds Emilia and sits down to talk to her. Meanwhile, Otto tries to restrain Garfield to give Emilia and Subaru time, but Garfield is much stronger and easily leaves the place, only to be trapped in a hole and without a pendant since Otto took it from him without him noticing. Soon, the hole is filled with insects on Otto's orders. It turns out that since he was a child, Otto always suffered from hearing strange voices, product of divine protection. Over time, his family taught him to communicate by writing and later by speaking. When he grew up, he realized that the strange voices belonged to animals, and he could talk to them. His brother advised him not to say anything, but in the end, he was discovered and people started treating him like a weirdo, and he decided not to use his powers anymore. However, as he grew up, he became involved in a problem with the daughter of the richest person in the city, and he had to flee his hometown and became a merchant with the goal of having his own establishment of it. But in this timeline, he did not meet Subaru first, but rather he was captured by the witch cult, and sometime later he was saved by Ricardo. Since then, he has been grateful to Subaru because it was thanks to him that he survived, and now he wants to return his favor. However, the forest animals are not so optimistic and know that he will end here if he does not flee from Garfield. Even so, Otto manages to evade him, but he begins to bleed from his nose due to the excessive use of his divine protection. Garfield, in the end, manages to catch him and easily defeats him and is ready to execute him. However, Ram shows up as they had agreed that she would help him. Garfield does not understand this since he does not believe that Subaru should deserve so much trust. And although Ram agrees, she also knows that in the moments when it is most needed, Subaru always comes to solve everything, and that is why she decided to help him. Ram begins to fight Garfield. He is severely hit by Ram, but he also hits her back, wounding her, so Ada uses Garfield's pendant to distract him and help Ram. Meanwhile, Subaru and Emilia are sitting in the crypt, and she tells him that she was scared because she thinks he is angry with her. But that is not the case. He was only scared because he lost her. Even so, she remains very terrified and angry, given that both Subaru and Puck broke their promises to stay with her. Then, Subaru confesses that he loves her and he understands that she is angry, but that doesn't change his feelings for her. Emilia doesn't understand it. She doesn't believe he can love someone like that, but Subaru insists that he loves her even with her flaws, and since he loves her too much, he's been doing everything to help her even if he gets hurt every time. Emilia, however, tells him that she has also suffered. Every time he helps her, he gets hurt and she suffers for him. Still, Subaru tells her over and over that he loves her, but she doesn't believe it's true. Mainly because in addition to abandoning her since Puck left, she's been slowly recovering her memories, and because of that, she's afraid that when she recovers them all, the Emilia that Subaru loves so much will disappear. Subaru says the same words as his mother to him. It doesn't matter how she starts or how she does it, but how she finishes, and he is ready to kiss Emilia, telling her that if she doesn't want the kiss, she can move away. But she relaxes and accepts his kiss, trusting him. Garfield remembers when he did his trial as a child and he was so traumatized by what he saw that he repeatedly hit his head against the wall until he got a scar. Subaru and Emilia leave the crypt and see a badly injured Garfield waiting for them. He wants to destroy the sanctuary, so no one else tries it again. But Emilia assures him that she knows that he is scared, she understands it, but from now on, she will look for the answer to her problems and will fight to move forward. Subaru also joins in, reminding him that his mother and sister are gone, to make the outside world a place for those in the sanctuary, unlike him who has lived in fear ever since. Garfield, unable to take it anymore, tells them that the reason for all of this, it is his mother, but he does not hate her, he just feels that he and his sister were burdens as children, and that is why he wanted her to leave the sanctuary, and so she could be happy. But shortly after leaving, his mother died in an accident, and that is why he doesn't want anyone to leave, because Sob doesn't want anyone to continue suffering outside the barrier, and that's why he becomes a beast, ready to stop Subaru and Emilia. However, Subaru throws himself towards him, ready to confront him using his power of shadows, also getting some help from Satella, thus managing to nail Frederica's pendant to him, and with it, annul his transformation. Now they can fight as equals, and while Garfield beats him, Subaru makes him understand that there is nothing wrong with feeling bad, but it is no excuse to give up and stop trying, because he and everyone he knows like Emilia and Rem agree with it. And suddenly, Subaru manages to use his unseen hand and he punches Garfield hard, but he doesn't give up, and he barely gets up to continue trying to stop them. But then, Subaru's dragon charges at him, knocking him aside and leaving him defeated. Shortly after, the two pass out, and while Subaru is unconscious, he names his new power as Invisible Providence instead of Unseen Hand. When he wakes up, he realizes that he is on Emilia's lap again, and not only her, Otto was also waiting for him to wake up, but surprisingly, Subaru hits him for having risked so much by stopping Garfield. Then his dragon does the same to Subaru, so he thanks his two friends for saving his life. On the other hand, Garfield wakes up in Ram's lap. He admits his defeat at the hands of Subaru, but does not plan to stop and will continue trying to prevent them from opening the barrier, but Ram offers him the opportunity to do the trial one more time and stop being a scared child. Garfield, remembering Subaru's words, and decides to finally enter the trial again. He enters the crypt and begins the first trial where he has to face his past. He is transported to the moment when his mother was saying goodbye to him and Frederica. Their mother was worried about them, so she left her two pendants for them to have until she returned with Garfield's father. Before leaving, she kisses Garfield's forehead. Garfield finally understands the scene, and his fictitious sister makes him understand that their mother really loved them, and the scar he has was only to forget about that love, and thus suffer less from her death. Just before the illusion fades, Garfield asks Frederica what to do, to which she returns the question. Garfield then realizes that he wants to do is what others expect of him, because Subaru, Emilia, and everyone else have reminded him how much his mother loved him. Thus, the illusion ends, and Garfield leaves the crypt and thanks Subaru for helping him overcome his past, and in a rather tsundere way, recognizes him as his boss and apologizes for what he did. Shortly after, Emilia gets ready to enter the sanctuary once again, but not before blushing, telling Subaru that after all this is over, they should talk about the kiss. Subaru also blushes and says that he wants a date with her. After that, Emilia enters the crypt and Subaru stays outside. Garfield approaches his side and apologizes because he accidentally saw the kiss, which leaves Subaru redder than ever. The crypt begins to shine, and Emilia sees that Subaru had written hundreds of messages of encouragement for her trial. That is what he was doing last night when he left her sleeping alone. Emilia laughs and is ready to start the trial. Immediately, she meets Echidna, who recognizes her as the daughter of a witch, but Emilia introduces herself as the frozen witch born in Ilier Forest. Echidna can barely keep up with Emilia, who is in a hurry to reach a small house embedded in a tree where Emilia's memories are sealed. Little by little, these begin to become clearer, where a little Emilia is seen spending time with Mother Fortuna, her mother's sister, who took care of her, since her parents were too busy to do it. Shortly after, Mother Fortune left her alone in the house, but a fairy guided little Emilia out, taking her to the village, where the witch's worshippers were helping to give resources to the inhabitants. One who leads them is Beetlejuice, but he is a calm and young guy who thanks Fortuna for her efforts in taking care of the seal, to which she thanks the clothing and resources that the cult gives them. In that moment, Archie appears. He is an assistant from Fortuna, and he says goodbye to Beetlejuice and the other cultists before leaving. Beetlejuice is asking how little Emilia is. He is happy when Fortuna tells him that she is fine. He says that as a sinner, he has no right to even see her, so he leaves. Archie tells Fortuna that she should go back to Emilia, and this is heard by the little girl who runs to the house. She is very dirty, so the fairy cleans her, and Emilia covers her clothes with ink to hide better. Fortuna sees her full of ink, and instead of getting angry, she hugs her. Echidna offers to do the trial once and for all, but Emilia still has something left to know: the seal. Days later, little Emilia noticed how Archie was more worried than usual, because he went to see her often. But when she ran away to go to the village, she didn't find anything out of the ordinary, only Beetlejuice worrying about Fortuna and that the seal remained intact. So the fairy offers to show her the seal, and little Emilia agrees to go, arriving at a door in the middle of a snowy field. Meanwhile, Subaru is outside suffering from embarrassment, since Garfield saw his kiss with Emilia and also read the love letter he left for her. Garfield and Otto try to console him, but the topic is diverted to Emilia, having been worried about how long it's taking. Then Subaru tells him that he was talking to Ryuzu's copies, but they postponed something very important and what is needed to free the sanctuary. At that moment, Bilma and Arma arrive. Back to little Emilia. She tries to open the seal without success, so she goes home, but on the way, the fairies guide her along another path, and she runs into Beetlejuice, who is so happy to see her that he begins to cry, feeling that he has been saved. But he cries so much that little Emilia comforts him. The Emilia of the present knows that this is the moment before everything ended badly, and although she is afraid, she knows that she should not, because she does not want Subaru's trust in her to be in vain. Little Emilia plays with Beetlejuice. While he does not stop worrying about her, he wants her to have fun at her house, safe and sound. But Fortuna knows that it is not possible. Little Emilia still wants to play with them, but Fortuna reminds her that by going out and following the fairies, she broke the promise she made to Fortuna, and by doing so, she disappointed her trust. Little Emilia begins to cry, and Fortuna makes her promise never to break a promise again. After promising that she would not do it, Emilia shows Fortuna and Beetlejuice the fairies, who are actually lesser spirits, proving that she has great talent as a user of spiritual arts. As Beetlejuice explains a little about this, Emilia mentions that he and Fortuna look like her parents, but Beetlejuice gets nervous and only mentions that he has known Fortuna for a long time, ever since something happened to Emilia's parents. Fortuna, upon hearing this, quickly diverts the topic, promising to explain it to Emilia another day. While they make their promise, Regulus, the archbishop representing greed, appears. Chapter 18. Meanwhile, outside, Shima is very weak and wants to tell him everything she knows. Before this place became a sanctuary, the original Ryuzu arrived at Echidna's territory, where she met Beatrice, Echidna's daughter. The girl had a bad attitude, but Echidna taught her to accept Ryuzu. After that first meeting, Ryuzu began working at Echidna's house, but Beatrice accompanied her everywhere under the excuse of time, which amused Ryuzu. Time passed, and one day Roswell's ancestor arrived at the house. Subaru is surprised to hear that Beatrice knew the Witch of Greed, but the others are even more surprised when Subaru tells them that he also met Echidna in his trial, as happened to Shima. She continues her story, telling them that one day the sanctuary collapsed and the true reason for its existence arrived. Meanwhile, Emilia witnesses how Beetlejuice is hostile towards Regulus, who is accompanied by a girl named Pandora. The girl wants to find the key and the seal in order to carry out the objective of the witch's cult, but as soon as Fortuna sees her, starts attacking her, saying to her to apologize for what she did to her brother and wife. However, her attacks do nothing to them, to which Beetlejuice orders Fortuna to take Emilia and run away, while he stays to face them, but Fortuna swears that she will come back and help him. Then Beetlejuice takes out a little black box where his last resource was contained, the unseen hand. When he opens it, a dark power surrounds him and his eyes cry blood, and he begins to use the unseen hands against Regulus, but he also loses the control. Seeing his great determination, Pandora, the Witch of Vanity, decides to reward Beetlejuice by naming him the Archbishop of Sloth. However, the love Beetlejuice feels for little Emilia cannot be compared, and that is why he continues fighting to defeat them. However, Regulus hasn't fallen yet, and he doesn't plan to let him do anything to Pandora while he's still there. Echidna reminds Emilia that they should go with little Emilia, but Emilia hesitates. Deep down, she knows that it is something she must do to overcome her past. Echidna and Emilia are transported, where little Emilia does not stop crying without wanting to let go of Fortuna, who is saying goodbye to little Emilia, while the adult Emilia recognizes that Fortuna was really her mother. In the end, Fortuna must leave due to her role as the guardian, knowing that she must protect the seal or the world will be in danger. She tasks Archie with acting as guardian and taking little Emilia with him to protect her. Little Emilia does not want Fortuna to leave her, but Fortuna promises her that no matter what happens, she will be with her in every moment, in every breeze, and in every day of her life. She will never leave her alone, making the two Emilias cry. Fortuna leaves and Archie takes Emilia through the forest. Little Emilia does not stop crying because she thinks that everything is her fault and they hate her for what is happening, but Archie assures her that it is not like that because everyone exists only to bless her. However, before he can tell her more, he is injured by the third witch fiend of the disease, the Black Viper, losing his leg. He therefore orders Emilia to run alone to a field of white flowers, while he stays to destroy the Viper. On the other hand, Betelgeuse is being defeated by Regulus, who is beginning to feel very sorry for him since he is too weak even with his unseen hand. Just before he is executed, Fortuna arrives to save him, attacking Regulus and assuring Betelgeuse that Emilia is safe. Regulus gets angry, wanting to finish off Betelgeuse, to which Pandora intervenes and tries to stop him, but Regulus goes crazy with anger and makes her eliminating her mercilessly. Meanwhile, Fortuna lets Betelgeuse know that she couldn't live in a world without him, and just before Regulus executes them, Pandora appears, getting rid of Regulus, sending him to a more private and peaceful place. Suddenly, Betelgeuse realizes that his wounds are gone, and Pandora tells them that they have returned to a time before the events. So Betelgeuse and Fortuna team up to end this, and Pandora just smiles. On the other hand, little Emilia is heartbroken trying to think of how to save them all, and she remembers that Pandora only wants the seal, and curiously, the lesser spirits guide her to the seal where Pandora was waiting for her. Pandora asks her to open the door with her key and promises that she and her followers will leave, since they only want to open the seal and do not want unnecessary victims. Little Emilia manages to materialize the key, but Pandora cannot see it, since only someone qualified to have it can open the seal. Little Emilia approaches the seal and is about to open it, but she stops when she remembers that she promised Fortuna not to open the seal. Pandora tries to convince her, but little Emilia does not give in. Fortunately, Fortuna arrives to save little Emilia and attacks Pandora non-stop, but without success. Then Pandora starts to bother her by talking about Emilia's parents, but Fortuna doesn't allow her to speak badly about her brother and his wife. Pandora does not want to fight and promises Fortuna that if they open the seal, they will leave, and asks her to convince little Emilia, since she refuses to open it because of the promise she made to her. This makes Fortuna proud. Fortunately, Betelgeuse arrives ready to eliminate Pandora, but something strange happens to him. His eyes are red, and he thinks he is about to attack Pandora, but his unseen hand goes through Fortuna's chest. When Betelgeuse's eyes return to normal, he realizes what he has done, and his mind breaks, and he abandons himself to madness. Pandora comforts him by telling him that all this was for his love, and thus the crazy Betelgeuse was born. Meanwhile, little Emilia cries while holding a dying Fortuna, who asks her brother for forgiveness for not being able to take care of Emilia, but little Emilia tells her that she forgives her because she has always been by her side and has always cared and loved her even more than her parents. Fortuna smiles and caresses Emilia one last time, saying that she's a crybaby and she loves her. Then Pandora approaches little Emilia and asks her to open the seal, since she is not chained to any promise, but instead, Emilia explodes with anger, launching attack after attack against Pandora. Suddenly, the entire forest begins to freeze, and so does her body. But Pandora wanted to try again after a while, so she takes away little Emilia's memories of everything that happened and lets her continue freezing and takes Betelgeuse with her. In the end, little Emilia was trapped in the ice, and her memories were modified. The trial has concluded, and Emilia must give her answer to Echidna to find out if she has accepted or rejected her past. Emilia says that she does not regret what she did because by rejecting Pandora and not having given her the key, she made Fortuna proud, and she still has hope of returning everyone in the forest to normal, and once she does, she will apologize to them. And when they forgive her, she will continue singing her dreams of living in a happy world so loudly that Fortuna will be able to hear her from heaven. After giving her answer, Echidna decides to let her pass the trial, saying goodbye to her, and hoping that she does not do well in the remaining 2 trials, since she has come to hate Emilia. After that, Emilia wakes up in the crypt, thanking Subaru for supporting her, and then bursts into tears for Fortuna. Outside, Subaru and the others have finished talking to Shima about the sanctuary, but now she's getting weaker, so Ram and Arma take her to rest, while the boys head off to see Rosewall. He greets them with his makeup on, since it is something like his paint. Subaru tells him that the board he set for their bed is going awry, as Garfield now supports them, and Otto, a person who does not appear in Roswell's prophetic book, has joined the game, and as such, they can dismantle everything Rosewell has built. So Subaru asks him to surrender, since Shima told him the real reason why the sanctuary was built. Chapter 20. Roswell's ancestor was a sickly young man until he met Echidna. She kissed him and drained the excess mana he had in his body, helping him feel better, since she herself had experienced that in the past. Sometime later, he went to Echidna's house and met Ryuzu and Beatrice. He tells them that thanks to her, he was able to inherit his family's fortune, and thus become a marquis. One afternoon, Beatrice and Ryuzu were talking by the river, and Roswell arrives to bother Beatrice. The 3 of them had become some kind of friends suddenly. Echidna summons them because an intruder has entered her territory. Roswell, upon learning who it is, becomes frustrated, since the sanctuary and the barrier are not yet ready, and they have no way to stop the enemy, nor to finish the barrier in time. That's why Ryuzu offers herself as the core of the barrier. She tells them that in this place she was happy, and that's why she wants to return the favor to Echidna and Rosewell. Although they disagree at first, they decide that they will use her as the core, and Beatrice will be in charge of carrying her. Meanwhile, Roswell goes out to buy time and begins to attack the intruder, but he easily knocks down without even touching him. This man turns out to be the devil of melancholy Hector. He quickly defeats Roswell, and at that moment, Ikenna arrives. Beatrice rushes to take Ryuzu to the core of the barrier, showing her the crystal where she will be contained and form the core. Beatrice and Ryuzu speak for the last time. Ryuzu is moved and she gets teary because despite her indifferent and sometimes hurtful manner, Beatrice has some appreciation for her. Then Beatrice realizes that Ryuzu is not going to enter and then leave, but that she will in the crystal forever, since the crystal is the catalyst to form the barrier and take advantage of Ryuzu's magic. This makes Beatrice very sad, and she wants to go out and negotiate with her mother to stop this, but Ryuzu knows that her end has come. So she tells Beatrice that although this place was not made for her, it was her who chose to be with them, who chose to live with them, and who chose to be happy with them. So to protect those happy memories, she enters the crystal, saying goodbye to her friend who had promised to teach her how to read and write. Now in the present, Subaru already knows all this, so he asks Roswell again to give up and dismantle all his plans, but he does not want to do it. And then he begins to question Garfield, since after a few words, Subaru managed to change his mind, questioning if he really loved his family. Garfield defends himself by telling him that he has not stopped loving them. He has not started following Subaru because his objective has changed, but because he chose him over Roswell since he wanted his weakness, while Subaru needed him for his strength. Then Subaru again wants to convince Roswell to give up, since Garfield is proof that goals do not change, only people do, but Roswell is not willing to give in. For 400 years, he has been in love with a woman, and that is why he does all this. In addition, he still has the advantage since he believes that Emilia, being stained by the lineage of the Witch of Envy, will always end badly, but Subaru, irritated, tells him that it won't be like that since he will always protect her because he is her knight. Roswell realizes that the two are very similar as they impose their ideals on the women they love, but unlike Roswell, who believes in weakness, Subaru believes in strength. While this was happening, Emilia had already calmed down, and she leaves the crypt. On the other hand, the boys are ready to go to the mansion to stop the assassins sent by Roswell. Garfield also accompanies them since he revealed to them that he has blood like his sister. It's not exactly half and half, so the barrier won't stop him. Meanwhile, Emilia leaves the crypt for a moment and finds Ram waiting for her. Emilia tells her that she has already passed the first trial, and Ram realizes that she has become much stronger. Suddenly, Ram kneels and begs her to save Roswell. His soul is possessed by a feeling from the past. It is a curse that has been tormenting him for a long time, and she wants to free him. For that, Ram tells Emilia that she must be ruler and be the queen of Lagunica, to which Emilia, despite not knowing the relationship between this and saving Roswell, agrees to do what Ram asks of her, since it is the first time she asked her for help. At that moment, Roswell arrives and Emilia immediately prepares for battle, but he only came to congratulate her, since he did not believe that she would be able to successfully pass the first trial. Not only that, but he also begins to question the relationship she has with Subaru. He tells her that he and Subaru are both equal, imposing their ideals on the women they love. However, Emilia denies this as Subaru loves her just as she is, with all her flaws and strengths. This takes Roswell by surprise, who did not expect Emilia to change so much, and even after trying to convince her that Subaru is lying to her, she is determined to back up his trust and prove that she can really clear the sanctuary and pass the trials. That is why Roswell gives up, but Emilia does not want this because she wants to show him that she can overcome all the obstacles that come her way, so she re-enters the crypt to begin the second trial. Alone, Roswell reveals to Ram that he knew her intentions, but he lets her continue acting as she sees fit but orders her to wait for Emilia when she comes out. After Roswell leaves, Ram also goes somewhere else while remembering the night she made a deal with Otto. She would help him rescue Subaru from Garfield's kidnapping under 3 conditions. First, Otto would have to take Garfield down a notch. The second was for Subaru to take care of Emilia, but the third could only be done by her. Ram reaches the core of the barrier, where Roswell was about to manipulate the weather to make it snow. However, Ram has gone to stop him, having decided to side with Subaru, and Roswell believes that she has come to take his body because when he massacred Ram's clan, she swore loyalty to him to survive after making a contract, which he promised that she could take his body after he turned into an empty shell. However, Ram is not interested in such a thing. She just wants to save him from illusion of the witch that has him possessed. But since she knows that she cannot face Roswell alone, she takes out a pendant, Puck's, the real reason why she collaborated with Subaru. Puck emerges from the pendant and begins a fierce battle with Ram against Roswell. Meanwhile, at Roswell's mansion, Petra is fleeing from Elsa while searching for Rem, but Elsa catches up to her and is ready to eliminate her. But Frederica prevents her and orders Petra to flee before she gets hurt. Petra does not want to lose hope, and she looks for Beatrice to help them, but she begins to cry in fear and asks Subaru to help them. Suddenly, Subaru appears like a hero and Petra is relieved. Meanwhile, Frederica is losing the battle and Garfield arrives just in time to prevent her execution. He is surprised that his sister has grown so much, and she hits him. but Elsa stops the tender moment between siblings and begins to attack Garfield, but he has a new shield to confront her. On the other hand, Subaru finds Beatrice and tells her that he will take her out of the library. Garfield asks his sister to take Rem out while he keeps Elsa busy, and after a small distraction, Frederica manages to escape while Garfield and Elsa continue their fight. Meanwhile, Subaru tries to convince Beatrice to leave the library, but she doesn't want to. She knows that she doesn't appear in her Book of Fate, and instead, she believes that her end at the hands of Elsa is written in the Roswell's Book of Fate, so she has lost hope. Subaru, however, believes that Echidna might just have made a mistake by giving her a blank book. Beatrice doesn't want to believe this because she has a contract with her mother, but Subaru contradicts her since she wanted to save Ryuzu, making her understand that she can choose for herself. Then Beatrice asks Subaru if he could be that person for her, but Subaru tells her that he isn't, so Beatrice flies him out of her library. Outside, he meets Petra and Otto, who warn him that there are witch fiends in the mansion, and they cannot scare them away with the protective crystals. Suddenly, Frederica appears with Rem tied to her back and takes them all out of the mansion. But Meili also appears, the tamer that brought the monsters. Frederica decides to stay to distract her, calming Petra by telling her that she is no longer willing to perish because she was finally able to meet her little brother after so many years. Subaru takes Rem and Otto takes Petra and they go to Roswell's office, where they will flee through a secret passage, but before arriving, they encounter the Guiltilo, a terrible creature. Meanwhile, Emilia is ready for the second trial. She must now face an unthinkable present, where Fortuna is still alive and is doing her hair. At that moment, Beetlejuice arrives. Since the three of them will go on a picnic, he notices that Fortuna is prettier than normal, but she is embarrassed and does not accept the compliment, and she is even more embarrassed when on the way, the villagers tell them they look like a family. At their picnic, Emilia proposes to Beetlejuice to go live with them, but he tells her that he does not want there to be gossip about Fortuna, but Emilia says that she will protect them from those who speak evil. After that, she leaves them alone and goes to a nearby cliff to observe them. At that moment, Archie appears and recognizes that they make a cute couple, but Emilia knows that this world is not real, they are dead. So no matter what she does, they will not revive, but what she knows is that she wants to be strong. She wants to stay with the life she has now, because everyone who has been with her taught her how to live her life, which must be strong, and she must not run away from her problems. So she thanks Archie for being like an older brother to her and says goodbye to him. In the end, she thanks Echidna for showing her such a beautiful world, but before it fades away, the witch acknowledges once again that she hates Emilia. Afterwards, she leaves the crypt and finds the villagers waiting for her, and although she makes it clear to them that they don't have to, they have decided to wait for her to finish her trials. And they are not the only ones. The half-bloods who have been trapped in the sanctuary also believe in her since Garfield's bravery has convinced them and they want to get out of there, so they will fully trust her. Emilia feels even more motivated, and she thanks them for their trust before entering the crypt once again, ready to face the last trial. Chapter 23. Back at the mansion, Garfield continues fighting against Elsa, who does not seem affected by his attacks since her wounds are healing, but that does not stop her from showing interest in Garfield for confronting her. In addition, he is not worried about his friends, since he has complete confidence that Subaru will overcome any problem. Although Subaru is fleeing from the Guiltilo with his friends, and when he finds himself cornered, he decides to set a trap for the beast by being the decoy, while Otto and Petra throw oil at the beast and he sets it on fire, but the mansion starts to catch fire, so he hands Rem to Otto and asks him to take care of Petra. He will go look for Beatrice. Meanwhile, Emilia arrives at the last trial, where she witnesses a possible future, where apparently everything has gone wrong and so a lot of lights begin to surround her, until they finally stop and she sees the silhouettes of Rem and Subaru, who give her encouragement to move forward. Then she is transported to Echidna's tea party, but before she can eat one of the cookies, Minerva stops her and tells her that Echidna is so irritated that she didn't want to come, and is surprised that Emilia is still so calm after she watched so many possible futures where she could end badly. But Emilia says that this only motivates her to move forward, moving Minerva, who gives her a big hug saying that she looks like her mother. After that, Minerva shows her the way out to open the sanctuary, and just before leaving, Emilia asks her to send a message to Echidna that she and the other witches will one day have a tea party together. Then she wakes up and sees the last door open, arriving at Echidna's tomb, where her corpse shines and from her hands come hundreds of connected spells, and Emilia realizes that it is the spell that maintains the barrier, and she breaks it. Relieved to have finally finished, she leaves the crypt and is surprised to see the entire place covered in snow. On the other hand, Garfield continues fighting Elsa, to which Meili arrives to help her older sister. Frederica also joins the fight, covering her brother from the witch fiends while he faces Elsa. Garfield tells her that he knows that she is a vampire and vampires can be killed. Elsa is not afraid and becomes more interested in him. So she tells him that she was born in a very cold place, and when she crossed someone for the first time, felt the warm blood and guts, and that made her happy. Garfield is not interested in the story, so he starts a fierce battle against her, and although Meili tries to help her, Frigerica takes her away, managing to distract Elsa enough for Garfield to bite her on the neck, and she begins to bleed out and thus her healing stops. Then Garfield takes a huge witch fan and crushes her, thus ending her once and for all. On the other hand, Ram and Puck continue fighting Roswell, who is not fazed that they destroyed the crystal and the core. This because he still believes that he can achieve his goal. Furthermore, Puck has already realized his plans and how he has been manipulating Emilia to remain discouraged. Puck mocks Roswell by saying that Beatrice will be very sad because of his actions, and Roswell falls for the provocation and attacks it harder, and Puck returns it. Ram also attacks Roswell, and he thinks that she also wants to get rid of him. But she tells him that her goal is neither to help Subaru nor to avenge her clan, but to save him because she loves him. Roswell doesn't believe her, but she says that at first, she hates him for being the one who destroyed her entire clan, but as time went by, she fell in love with him. Roswell is so surprised that this gives Puck enough time to attack. Then Ram approaches him, and Roswell thinks that she wants to attack him after her declaration of love, but in reality, she took the Book of Fate from him and says that this is the root of the problem, and to Roswell's horror, she throws it into the fire. Then Roswell launches a fire attack and everything explodes. Puck complains that Roswell lost his temper in that last attack, while Roswell holds Ram, who is unconscious, in his arms. Suddenly, it starts to snow, and Puck realizes that Roswell had already cast the spell to make it snow before the fight. So before leaving, Puck tells Roswell that no matter how hard he tries, he will never be like that devil. Since he is still human, Roswell bursts into tears as he passes mana to Ram through the scar from her lost horn. Meanwhile, Emilia finds the villagers and the half-bloods waiting for her in an ice fort created by Puck. Upon seeing this and a giant ice tree, she realizes that there are still things to do and asks the villagers to take refuge in the crypt. Emilia reaches the ice tree and realizes which way to go and finds all the copies of Ryuzu. Bilma explains to her that to end everything, they must free the original Ryuzu, or else the damage will be irreparable. Before starting, they give her Puck's crystal, and then let Shima be in charge of freeing the original Ryuzu, feeling happy that this story is finally over. After that, Ryuzu's copies take Emilia to where Roswell and Ram are, finding them in the middle of the snow. Where Roswell is freezing but continues to pass mana to Ram, Emilia tries to make him react, but he just repeats that nothing matters anymore, to which Emilia contradicts him, letting him know that after passing the 3 trials, she still wants to continue on her path even if she doesn't know how all this will end. Suddenly, the great rabbits, hundreds of rabbits, arrive, and Emilia attacks them before they attack first, and she asks Ryuzu's copies to carry Roswell and Ram. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Beatrice is still in the magical library, remembering how everything went on after Ryuzu became the catalyst for the barrier. Her mother left her in charge of the library and gave her the Book of Fate with the task to find someone who could keep all her knowledge, leaving Beatrice alone. For 400 years, Roswell's descendants visited the library non-stop, but they rarely spoke to each other at all. Then there were people who wanted to take her out, but she always refused, until she met his brother again, Puck. But she quickly understood that they were different, since he had Emilia, while she had nothing but a blank book. Then Subaru arrived, who at first seemed like no one important, and although Beatrice believed that he was the person she was waiting for, she followed Roswell's orders and sent him to the sanctuary, even though that would condemn her to remain alone for who knows how many more years. The mansion is burning, and Subaru finally manages to find a door that leads him to Beatrice's magical library, but she tries to reject him once again. But Subaru makes her realize that she doesn't completely reject him, and that's why he still can find her. However, he is determined to be with her, so at least she does not feel alone. But upon hearing this, Beatrice says goodbye and throws him out of the mansion, because when all the doors of the mansion burn, no one will ever be able to see her again. Subaru, horrified, re-enters the mansion because he knows that there is one last door left, the one in the basement. The mansion's about to collapse, so he opens it with faith that Beatrice will prevent him from dying, and she does it. Subaru is again in the library, but this time the library is burning too. So Subaru walks through the fire and offers her his burned hand and asks her to choose him. He knows that although she is strong and capable of living alone, her greatest fear is being alone, so he wants to accompany her. But Beatrice can't take it anymore and starts to cry because she knows that sooner or later Subaru will pass away like everyone she loves. But Subaru tells her that he will burn the memories they make together, and so she can never forget how happy they were. So he asks her once again that she choose him to get her out of this. In the end, she chooses him and take his hand. Meanwhile, the thousands of carnivorous rabbits are surrounding the crypt, and only Emilia prevents them from advancing, but she is very tired. Suddenly, a pink lightning strikes next to her, and Subaru and Beatrice arrive to help her. Beatrice teaches Subaru how to do attack magic, since now they have a contract. With their powerful attacks, they manage to eliminate many rabbits, but the problem is that they multiply very quickly and infinitely, so they make a plan to put an end to them once and for all. Beatrice and Subaru begin to attract the attention of the rabbits, locking them in a giant square, and Emilia helps them by closing the last line. This immobilizes them, and Beatrice sends them to a desolate space like the library, from which they will not leave again. Finally, the villagers and the half-bloods are able to leave the crypt and celebrate their freedom. Seeing that everything is over, Roswell cries while Ram wakes up to comfort him. At the same time, Subaru congratulates Beatrice for her good work. Shortly after, Beatrice and Roswell go to Echidna's grave. Roswell warns her that she will not be Subaru's number one, but Beatrice recognizes that she did not choose Subaru for that, but because she wants him to be her number one. Seeing that Beatrice has not changed, Roswell reveals that he has not changed either and tells her that he is the Roswell that she knew, since he achieved the method to be immortal that Echidna was looking for so much. The key was to transfer the soul to a body that is related to that soul, in his case, his descendants. Upon finding out this, Beatrice gets angry with him and makes him kneel at her level, and she slaps him in the face. And so they make peace with each other, as well as with Echidna, and finally say goodbye to her. On the other hand, Emilia and Subaru can finally be together, and alone he notices that Emilia has become stronger. But quickly, she changes the subject and blushes furiously. Subaru asks her what's wrong, and she tells him that they have to talk about the baby inside her, believing that Subaru got her pregnant because of their kiss, and Subaru can't believe that Puck hasn't explained to her about how babies come into the world. Shortly after, Otto, Garfield, and Frederica go to hit Roswell a few times to get even for everything he put them through. Even Petra hits him with her white handkerchief. After the beating, he lies on Ram's lap, and they think that she has a strange taste in men. After that, Subaru says that despite his crimes, they need him because Emilia cannot compete in the royal selection without his support. Garfield objects because he does not trust him, to which Roswell unfixes and shows them that he has an oath engraved on his chest, which was engraved on his body after losing his fight in the bet with Subaru. In the same way, if Subaru had lost the bet, the oath would have been carved into his chest and then burned into flames. So Roswell swears that he will never harm anyone present again or else he will into flames, but Petra does not want to forgive him, since because of him the people of the village could have suffered a lot. However, she does not plan to stand in the way of others for this, she just will not forgive Roswell. Emilia, on the other hand, believes that the most important thing is still missing, and that is for Roswell to apologize, since he has done many bad things and asking for forgiveness is the right thing to do, and Roswell does it. Sometime later, a knighthood ceremony has been organized and everyone is present, the villagers, the half-bloods, and Subaru and Emilia's friends like Rem, who is already woken up although she is weak and is cared for by Ram. But before starting, Roswell lets Subaru know that his path will be very difficult and his objective has not changed. He still wants to see Echidna, so as soon as Subaru makes a mistake, Roswell will use him to get to her. But for now, he recognizes that he has won this time. The ceremony begins and Emilia finally names Subaru her knight, and he swears that he will always be by her side. After that, the party starts, but Subaru decides to go out and Emilia follows him. They talk about Roswell, still not forgetting what happened, but instead she is more interested in talking to her knight later, making him promise that he will go to her room more later. After promising her, Subaru notices that she is down and he tells her that he saw the way she looks at the others at the party. He has realized that this is just another reason for her to ascend the throne, and therefore assures her that she can trust him to support her and help her forever. That moves her and makes her feel better. Then seeing how beautiful the party is, Emilia feels happier than ever. She feels that it is her ideal scenario, so she takes Subaru's hand and they go out to dance happily among the other guests.